my podcast, like, I had to, my when I wasn't here, the computer updated.
Right.
What's up, everybody? It's Nice Guy Andy podcast. You know what we do? It's Thursday night, and we watch wrestling. We talk to wrestlers. We talk to independent filmmakers. We talk to independent musicians. We talk to anybody that's independent, guys. And tonight we have Jeff Waldridge, yeah. Waldridge in the house. A documentary filmmaker, has done a couple wrestling documentaries. One is From Little to Legendary, about the story about legendary Larry D. And then you have a HARDWAY deathmatch documentary.
Yeah, HARDWAY. That's basically the story of deathmatch wrestling in the United States.
Okay. And like always, we have Superfly Johnny Lee.
What's up, everybody? I'd like to take this moment to address our sponsors. Appalachian Mountain Wrestling, Kyle Maggard and them. They're gearing up for the biggest pay-per-view of the year. King of Mountains is going to be live on D&D Sports Network. Get your tickets. They're still available. If you don't, you're flat out of luck if you want to get that front row seat. I want to shout out Ultimate Championship Wrestling, Triangle and them. They've been putting on some hell of a great fair shows right now. If you're missing out, you better not, because I'm telling you right now, guys, you want to go there and see them. I want to shout out Joe Monroe. Thank you, brother, for the donations that you made for us. Always a pleasure. And also go see Triple Crown Wrestling, because that's where you'll see Joe Monroe himself wrestling. I also want to shout out...
Joe has a podcast, too.
Yeah, he does. It's called The Joe Monroe Show. If you don't know when it airs Sundays. So get your asses on there, check it out, show them some love, send them a subscription, and make sure that you check out The Joe Monroe Show, because I'm telling you guys, he's a good talker, and he'll educate you on some things. I want to shout out Adam Asher, our brand new sponsor. Always throwing graphic designer. I'm telling you guys, you help this kid. He's only 15 years old, and he's already that good at graphic designing. He made us a graphic just recently, just out of the blue, just like that. We asked him to. He sent us 2 of them. They're both great. Check them out. Also go and check out Marty Clay's, because he made Marty Clay's.
He's done work for Marty Clay and Henry Shaw.
And Adrian Alexander. Because that's what's on his tights, too.
Exactly.
Adrian actually wears the graphic, and so does Marty Clay.
Heck yeah.
We even got the shirt that Marty Clay had made.
And also, we want to shout out Phenomenal Finds, asking classic wrestling memorabilia, figures, and Phenomenal Finds ATL shirts.
That's right. And also, they'll auction off this stuff whenever they can. But make sure that you hit them up and buy from them. Also want to shout Bo's Tractor Works. You're talking about some good CDE cream. This stuff, if you want to work out, you can use it for pre-workout. Get those muscles all nice and rubbed in, and you're good to go.
Johnny uses it for other things. He likes to rub it in real good.
Andy, it looks good.
Yeah.
I want to get it all in my hands.
It is a muscle, I guess.
It is a muscle, ain't it, Johnny?
It is a muscle. You got to work that shaft sometimes.
And Big Kahuna Hawaiian Barbecue on Liberty and Winchester Road.
That's right.
It's I think it was Is it still Burger Week?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Burger Week still. It's always Burger Week at Big Kahuna. They have that great the Big Kahuna burger. It's just delicious.
Hey, I'm telling y'all now, you want some grilled pineapple? That's the burger you get. Big Kahuna burger, because you saw it in Pulp Fiction. Well, now it's real, baby, in Lexington, Kentucky.
They have a big, giant Samuel L. Jackson over there on the wall. That's a mural. It's just fucking great. And sadly, go take a picture with it.
And sadly, it won't recite Bible verses at you.
Yeah.
Or call you a motherfucker.
You have to keep those in your head. And every time I'm over there, I'll call you a motherfucker.
Yeah, you do. I've heard you several times.
And then we have Matt's Games, Collectibles, and so much more up in Eastland Shopping Center. Guys, go up there for all your retro gaming needs. They have all new games up there too, I think. And then they have a bunch of Legos up there. I'd like to go up there and play with the Legos sometimes. Go up there and buy all the green Legos.
Yeah. I also want to say the Funko Pops, you got to go get them, because he's always getting them. And some retro games, you can never go wrong with a good retro NES, Nintendo 64, or anything else.
Are we leaving out anybody?
Not that I know of. Oh look.
Oh, Sean Johns has got a job at the Cracker Barrel, like
Oh,
like
I
a
gotta
good,
go. I gotta
like
go
a good
let Sean
cracker,
in.
like a good cracker. Go
Yeah.
let the cracker in.
Shot. I'm gonna come get you, Cracker Jack. He is a cracker though.
So how you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. I'm good. You know, staying busy. It's starting to. You know, I don't know. There's usually a time of year that I slow down,
Yeah.
but I find that those times are getting smaller and smaller,
Yeah.
and you just stay busy year round.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. We like to stay busy up here at the podcast. Like we do a show every week, but like when it's not hot as hell in the podcast studio, we do about 2 shows a week.
You know,
and
it
then-
ain't too bad in here right
Yeah,
now.
really,
You know?
man. The air conditioning, like, I think it's good because me and Johnny came in here Saturday morning. It was like freezing in here, but like they turn it off at around 5 or 6 o'clock, and I'm like, I'd beg them to turn it on, but you know, they were like,
Well, I mean,
whoa, leave the air conditioner on if you want to pay
the
more
rent. Why can't they leave it on?
Well, I mean, I don't pay much.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
surely you wouldn't pay a lot for what you have here, but
Exactly.
I mean, maybe they can throw you some air conditioning.
Yeah, we don't want to talk bad about the guys that own the studio, so
Yeah, you know.
they're good people. They
Yeah,
are.
they really. This is a nice little setup you have here.
Well,
I'm very
thank you,
impressed.
thank
with
you
it.
very much.
She's live and she's talking.
We've tried very much to make it look professional. I mean, and people come in here, they're always impressed with the studio. So
Oh,
You know.
look this. We got Bobby Green in the house.
what's up?
Bobby Green.
What's up, Bobby Green?
He said,
Look at this
I
guy.
heard-
Walk in front of the camera.
He said,
What
I
are you
heard.
dressed up like?
I just came in.
I told you a Cracker
You're
Jack.
like a damn cracker.
He's-
Cracker Barrel.
He's ready to go. He's
You work at Cracker Barrel now?
Yeah, I do.
Hell
He's
yeah! What are you
more-
doing up there? Hosting?
I'm in the retail store.
Oh, you're in the store. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
selling shit.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's right.
they
Hey,
got,
I mean,
their,
you're-
they got their Halloween stuff out. I
You're a
guess.
great.
They just set out the first Christmas tree today.
Oh well, that's horrible.
hey.
Oh, okay. Your mic's off. Okay, your
That's
mic's
fine.
on. Your mic's
They
on.
just set out their first Christmas
Well,
tree
that's
today.
horrible. I hate
Yeah.
to see that.
I know, right?
Hate to see that. Yeah, no, Christmas is coming around.
Yeah.
Still summer though, guys.
We
Come on.
haven't even got to Halloween
I
yet.
know,
I know.
right? Hey,
Right.
John Gilbert said, "What's up, boys?"
What's up, Big
What up, Big
John?
John?
Big John?
Does Big John got a podcast now? Everybody has a podcast.
Yeah, he's got
Everybody has
a
a
I'm
podcast.
gonna put all these guys on the on
Big
our
John Gilbert
channel.
doing his
Just
own
make a
podcast.
scrolling,
Yep.
a
Taking
scroll
after
of the podcast.
and-
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Everybody
him.
show.
I'm gonna have. I think I'm gonna put all their podcast on our
Yeah, we
Facebook
should.
feed, so we can.
Heck yeah.
We're the daddy of all these guys.
Oh, so you got this guy that hates Scott Diamond inside here. He's like Jim Brown's name. You know who Jim
Yeah, I
Brown
know
is.
Jim.
He said, "What's up, Jeff? Hope y'all are doing good." Yeah,
Yep,
he don't
doing
give
good.
no good
Yeah.
to Scott Diamond.
Yeah, he don't care much for Scott.
No, he don't like
you know.
Scott at all. But
And he was
Scott's a
recently
bad
at-
guy. You know.
You know
sometimes.
that's what he's supposed to do.
It's supposed to
so.
be. We like Scott a lot. He's a really good friend of the podcast. He's actually going to have a diamond exchange pretty soon here
Yeah,
coming up.
August 12th.
Frank the Tank's going to be in here
Yeah.
with the. Are we supposed to? Am I supposed to say that?
No.
No.
Don't worry.
It's
You've done said it now.
I done said it now. All right, Frank the Tank's coming in here with Scott Diamond on the diamond.
Scott's gonna-
The diamond exchange.
beat
He's
you
going to
with a
beat me,
cane.
but like I've already
Hey,
said it now.
That's okay. He'll still beat you. It's a fucking
I didn't think it. I mean, New South announced that he was coming. So.
But-
Oh, they
I mean,
did.
yeah,
they did.
but-
So
But
did.
you know, you are John Gilbert's daddy. He just said, "Daddy Andy."
Yeah, Daddy, call me Daddy, baby.
Are you going to give him the belt when he calls
nope.
you daddy?
Nope.
I'm thinking about
Dizzle,
getting,
what
I'm
you
thinking
said
about
wasn't
getting
nice.
some championship tag team championships and then just giving them to John Gilbert.
Yeah, because
He could be the whole tag team
be
himself.
nice.
I mean,
Yeah.
think
I mean,
about
he's
this.
big. He's big enough to be the whole tag team.
Hey, when's he coming back? He's coming back to the studio soon, right?
Yeah, in August.
Okay, cool.
We don't want him back.
He
no,
he's
he's-
gonna be coming with Marty
Folks.
Clay.
Huh?
He come with Marty Clay.
Oh, he's coming with Marty Clay. That's going to be a really good show.
Oh
he
my
is.
God.
Jim Brown said Andy Pressey gonna whip Scott Diamond's ass.
Oh, sir, we can't.
I mean,
Did y'all see Scott take a bump the other night?
yeah, I saw it.
Out the ring, he bumped himself and went out the ring. He's
Yep.
trying to get.
Well,
He's,
they must have paid him extra. For
I
that.
know, he's
got double for that.
I think he's trying to get back in the ring shape.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I think my money's on Scott Diamond because that man. he'll
I've
find a
bumped
way.
Scott Diamond a few times.
I think Scott Diamond and Scott Storm match is going to happen at some
Yes.
point.
I do too. I mean, he's always
Yeah.
told Scott, you keep on putting him over one too many times, you're gonna get the old Scott Storm.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Could happen.
what
So
got
Jeff,
you-
how'd you get Larry D to do a documentary for you?
I've known Larry D forever.
Yeah.
I mean, well, ever since he was a little Larry D. I mean, you know, when he first broke in, he was like 17 years old.
We're big fans of Larry, and we rest in peace to his dad. His dad just passed away.
Yeah, a good man.
Bobby
That's
Jones.
Bobby was a real good man, and you know, we would. I had the opportunity to work with him a whole lot, doing the documentary and being around him a whole lot.
Oh, his dad?
And he worked so hard for Larry and them to just. I mean, he also instilled that into
He was
Larry.
Larry's biggest fan.
Yeah, and that work ethic is what you see in Larry, and Larry still. I mean, you can see that drive, and it's. But his dad's just a great human being. I mean, it's. It's a horrible thing that happened, but you know, it
Cancer
is awful.
sucks.
It does.
Cancer
It
does.
is. It's
It takes a
awful.
lot of good people. It took a really
took
good
my
friend of mine
grandpa.
last couple years ago, Don Ferris. So, rest in peace of Don.
And it took my grandpa, rest in peace to Richard
Yeah,
Martin.
it's a very, very bad disease to see people just, you know, waste away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. And Hardway is your deathmatch documentary.
Yeah, the HARDWAY is probably the documentary that's got the most exposure. It's probably one of my greatest pieces of work that I've done because it was literally almost self-funded. But if it hadn't been for the legendary documentary, HARDWAY would have probably never really kind of took off.
Yeah.
And how that came to be was Larry D was wrestling for IWA Mid-South with Ian Rotten, and I went with him to film for Little Legendary and just get footage in general. You'll see some of that footage with him when he wrestled John Wayne Murdoch down there. It's in the documentary. And I was back there just filming, doing this, doing that, getting shots. And they had just had King of the Death match, the most recent one before that, when I was filming. And there was just carnage everywhere backstage. And, you know, broken glass and broken tables and whatever. So I was like, you know, I'd always been a fan of deathmatch wrestling ever since the Cactus Jack Terry Funk tournament in Japan.
Yes.
You know, I remember back in the day in middle school, my friend coming in and telling me about this, and I was like, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not, like, that, what you just told me is not true.
Yeah.
And then he brought me the tape, and I watched it, and I was like, this is something I've never encountered before, because to that point, the most hardcore thing I had seen was Memphis wrestling, you know, and they would do things.
And you got to love the internet, man, because now you can see
you
all that
see
stuff.
everything,
You can see all that stuff now. My son, my little 12-year-old son, knows about Stone Cold and all the.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he wasn't even born, like, you
Yep.
know, back then, but he knows all about Stone Cold, all about The Rock, all about Jericho, like all about all that.
Yeah, I mean,
know.
growing up before the internet, all you
Yeah.
had was wrestling magazines.
Yeah, we didn't have
And then
nothing.
wrestling magazines, they may have pictures, or you may just have to read and put that in your brain
What
of
was
what
the
happened.
What was the really good magazine? Wow, was that?
Yeah,
Wow.
That was I
Yep.
loved that magazine. It was
World
so
of
thick.
Wrestling.
Yeah,
and
and it had color photos.
Oh, yeah.
and
color
it was
photos.
everything.
It's so thick
Yep.
and always had a really cool design on the front. I don't even know if they have that
And
magazine.
before the
anymore.
internet, whenever you had Sonny on the magazine, I mean,
The
you had to do what
numbers
you had to
went
do.
up.
Oh yeah, and you had the you know, had some of the wrestling like Sable and
Yeah.
China were in
Yeah,
play.
they would
Right.
always put that out there, you know, but, you know, the old wrestling magazines would kind of show you glimpses of things
Yeah.
like that, but then you would have to kind of watch those tapes. And,
My
you know, I got
my
into
first
tape trading.
experience, my first experience with like ECW and any of those other hardcore wrestlings was like in those magazines.
Well, I seen it in the magazines, and in the magazines, I remember you seeing it, and you're like, "Oh, that's." I wonder how I could see that. And
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
it
Where do
used
I-
to come
where do I watch
on
that shit at?
the Sunshine Network. We could pick it up like at 1 a.m. It would come on cable TV.
Yeah.
So I would literally go to my cousin's house that had cable television, and I would stay up until like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
But it wasn't consistent.
Yeah.
There'd be some weeks where it wouldn't come on at all, and I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
shit, it
Exactly.
didn't come on. But then there'd be other weeks where you'd watch it all.
Man, it's cool, like how wrestling has brung so many people into my life, and how we just, you know, you can meet a complete stranger, like me and you are
Right.
complete strangers
Yeah.
right now. We're going to get to know each other. We're going to be really good friends, I think.
Yep.
But like you meet a person and then you talk about wrestling and you feel like you know that guy for
Yeah,
forever.
and I think that's the way it's always been, I think. And I think back in the day, you know, I think it got down to the circumstance of, you know, some wrestling fans back in school, they're like, you know, you're dorks. You know,
Yeah,
they're like
exactly.
the nerdy kids about wrestling, like
Yeah.
other things. And then you kind of group together like a little cult. And I remember my wardrobe when I was in high school and middle school was basically wrestling shirts, but they were like obscure ones, like ECW and things like that.
I always remember that I would go, like, for the summer, I would go over to my cousin's house, and we would just, they would have cookouts, and we would just run around the backyard, and we would just be like, not really playing wrestling, but like acting like you're beating each other up and stuff like that. It just takes you back to that play that you had as a kid, and I always say that it's like wrestling is what a grown man really would like a street match. I think that's what real men would want a real street match to be. So I can come up and drop an elbow on you and punch you in the mouth, and nobody really gets hurt.
Right.
But everybody wishes real fighting was like wrestling, pro wrestling. I think that's...
Yeah, and I think that, and kind of getting back to the whole deathmatch thing once I started and I seen that original tournament, and I was like, they had like Terry Gordy and folks like that.
It right here?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the finals.
Yeah.
So I watched that, and then I started to just dig more.
Yeah.
And then I remember I would just buy like Big Japan tapes, and I would buy FMW tapes and IWA tapes, and I would just try to collect as much as I could.
Yeah.
And watch all of that. And so I had no clue what they were saying because it was all in Japanese, but you could hear Terry Funk, you could hear Cactus Jack, or or whatever. But you could you really just watched the screen, and the screen told the story.
Yeah.
And I loved that kind of stuff. So I was always into death matches, and even in the indies.
And at that point, you can make up your own story yourself.
Oh yeah, you didn't know. You just want to see two guys get in there and wrestle in a piranha pit, or wrestle in with an alligator in the middle, or whatever the case was.
I mean that's how we all want wrestling.
So I remember that piranha death match. That was like the reason I bought the tape. But then when you get the piranhas were in there swimming, but they pretty much just murdered them. If you're getting anywhere near them, you're going to murder the fish. But back in the day, they didn't really think about that kind of stuff.
No,
they
true story.
Yeah, so we got into that, and I remember Ian Rotten and Madman Pondo they were in a wrestling magazine where they had this Four Corners of Pain match at a truck stop, and they were that may have been one of your first real American Japanese style death matches.
Okay.
And they kind of brought that style over here. Ian and Axel did, and then Pondo was involved in that, and they were kind of the forefathers in America of that Japanese death match style. So of course I wanted to show how that scene had evolved to this day, because it is evolved. It used to be, you would have guys like Ian and Axel and Madman Pondo and Necro Butcher, and they put a psychology behind the matches, and it wasn't just guys swinging shit and hitting each other with things. Well, you had other guys that seen these guys actually wrestling this way, and they were like, well, we're just going to do it too. And then you had guys swinging shit and and they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
But Pondo and those guys were the forefathers.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to kind of tell that story of how that evolved today, because when you got in there and you started to really get into that scene, it's almost like an underground punk scene.
Yeah.
And there's wrestling fans that have no idea that this stuff goes on.
There's wrestling fans that don't even like it. There's like hardcore wrestling fans that don't like the deathmatch stuff, and there's deathmatch guys that just want to watch deathmatch.
And there's people in regular citizens that when they've seen my trailer, they've watched the documentary, they're like, holy shit, we had no idea this was happening.
Yeah,
this is like real Fight Club.
Let's ban this.
And they were like, is this blood real? I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that the documentary is called HARDWAY, and that's a term, an insider term in wrestling that means you get busted open without using a gig or blade.
Yeah.
And it's HARDWAY, and that's the way a lot of these guys were going, was HARDWAY, because they would get hit with a tube or something like that, and a lot of these guys were just
like paying
bleeding.
And a lot of them like paying their dues and giving respect to the guys that have done it before, like just to do it the hard way.
Yeah, and these guys were, so I was like, okay, how do I break into this scene? Because, I mean, I had been in the business. I broke into the business when I was 16. So, I mean...
The wrestling business?
Yeah, the wrestling business. When I was 16, I started training. I was a sophomore in high school, just getting ready to be a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And I'll tell that story before I get to HARDWAY, because all this matters in that circumstance.
So is this when Black Rain was born?
Well, yeah, it's kind of the evolution of it. So I had a wrestling fan forever. I'd always wanted to be a wrestler.
Yeah.
I mean, forever. So
I've been a wrestling fan ever since I can remember.
yeah, I mean, I would
Me
watch
too.
every weekend. Would watch Memphis wrestling. That was Jerry Lawler was my Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And then I, of course, got into WWF.
Ric Flair was mine because,
yeah.
like, I would watch the Saturday morning WCW, Saturday morning NWA stuff, and I liked Ric Flair, but like Arn Anderson, I thought was
Right.
like my
Arn was
like I had uncles that looked like fucking Arn
Yeah.
Anderson. I'm like, my uncles
like
look like
yeah,
him,
like
dude.
he was the guy.
My
Yeah.
uncles look like Arn Anderson. They'll kick your ass.
So like I remember when I met Jerry Lawler, it was almost like for me, it was almost like meeting Hulk Hogan. Or
Oh,
something,
yeah,
because
yeah.
I was
He's
like
still
I
a-
watched
he's still a
him.
legend,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but I remember that I always wanted to get into wrestling, and I was going to this little show in Lawrenceburg in this little town called Glensboro, at this little shithole arena.
Everybody talks about the
And it's legendary.
Legendary.
It is. But I was down there. Okay, I went to the second show ever.
Yeah.
That was in Glensboro, and I was in high school. And I remember me and my dad went because they had done this thing that a lot of indies would do back in the day, and they would play a game on words. So they would have Tommy the Dreamer. Or they would, so it was kind of trying to snooker you in to
Yeah.
think you were going to see these stars,
Yeah,
right?
Tommy Dreamer.
So, or they would have like, Rick Gibson, or they would have, you know what I'm saying, or the rock and roll something.
Yeah.
And it's where
It's
fans
rock and roll
that-
depressed.
right. And it would be like,
Real
What,
quick.
what are you saying?
John
John
Gilbert
said-
says I look like a detective.
And then
Really, John?
Ian Mosley said he's looking a little sus.
Really, Ian? Why you gotta hate?
but
I just
but
got off work. guys.
they would do that old trick, and there was a lot of that's one of the old scams that one of these carny scams that they would
yeah.
pull is they would advertise. See Jake the Snake. Well, then the day of the show, right at showtime, they would say, "Well, Jake the Snake couldn't join us tonight,
Snake.
Yeah.
and
We got a snake, but we don't have Jake the Snake.
That's
So-
right.
But he left his snake here to look at.
That's the reason that the athletic commission put in the rules that you have to announce before showtime if somebody does not appear that they have the opportunity to get a refund. Because these promoters were doing this stuff and then announcing, hey, he wasn't here tonight, travel
Yeah.
issues, whatever. And so they did that. So me and my dad went because we knew that we wasn't going to see Tommy
Oh, yeah, of
Dreamer.
course.
We knew we wasn't going to see some of these folks.
The best wrestling fan is the smart wrestling
Right.
fan
That's
that
right.
knows, hey, I'm going to go down here and I don't know what the fuck I'm going to see, but
Right.
I'm going to see something.
So me and my dad went on the whole stance of we wanted to see what kind of shit show this could be.
Exactly.
And
sometimes the worst wrestling's the
right.
best.
And I love bad
Terrible
wrestling.
wrestling is
Yes,
great. It
like
really is.
like even to this day, if I'm going to watch bad wrestling, I'd rather watch it than a 5-star match.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so we went down there and we watched it, and they had a guy that whatever. There was different guys down. Tommy Gunn was actually wrestling, and he was probably one of the best ones down there.
Yeah.
Terry Allen
Well, they
was
had some
down
really
there.
good wrestlers
Yeah, they
down
really
there.
did,
Yeah.
and they were guys that kind of went the area.
Yeah, the Greens were down there. The
Yep.
Steels were down there.
But this was kind of before their time.
Scott Storm?
Yep.
He was eventually.
Yeah.
So I mean, there were some guys down there that really had the ability.
Yeah.
But they were just trying to get people down there. Well, we went every week because it was fun to watch.
Yeah,
they were
fun.
good. They actually had really good storylines. The angles were pretty good.
It's the only place you can go and watch a show and be the audience, be
it
part
was
of it.
$6.
Yeah, and you can
it
cuss
was-
them, they can cuss you back, and like it's just
Oh, and that's the funnest part to watch.
Yeah.
It is
So,
the funnest part.
we were down there. We went every week, and they built that place up. I mean, there was times when they had 300 people in that little building.
Yeah.
And it was so hot in there. They didn't have air, but it was just fun to watch.
Yeah.
And it was so great. But I remember there was a guy there by the name of Purple Haze, and he had done other things. He had wrestled other promotions and, wrestled matches with Sabu and things. And he was like, to me, he was really good. I could tell that he was really good, but I could tell that he wasn't really from that area, but from his style. So, me and my good friends started talking to him, and he agreed to train us, and we started training in Glensboro in that old boxing ring. It was converted into a ring, and that damn thing was hard as a rock.
Oh yeah, I've heard about
And
that.
I remember we had to. My mom and dad actually took us down there. We couldn't even drive yet. I didn't even have my license, and we went down there. I was 16, and actually, I think when I started, I was right at the end of 15, turning 16. Started taking bumps, and that first night they were like, listen, you can't tell anybody that you're training because you know they preach kayfabe, because all that stuff everything was still very veiled, everything was still very secretive. That special hadn't even come on TV yet that showed everything behind the scenes. And so they were like, listen, you're training, you're going to school, you can't tell anybody anything. So I was like, okay, we won't tell. So I remember the next day, my dad, the only condition he had, God rest his soul, was he said, you can do this, but you're not going to miss school. So I don't care how sore you are in the morning. Your ass is going to get up, you're going to go to school. And I was like, okay.
I tell my son the same thing. He likes to stay up late talking to his girlfriend. I'm like, care what you do. As long as you go to school and get good grades, cool.
You know, like back then they wanted to see what you could take. So that bump, and then that ring, it almost kill you. And so next morning I got up and I could barely walk. And I remember going to school and everybody's like, hey, what is wrong with you? And I was like, I've been working out, I'm doing this or whatever, lifting weight. I had to come up with some bullshit story.
Nowadays the school counselors would be like,
they would probably send the police to my house.
Your dad's beating you.
So
look at his back, he's got been beaten.
Scott Diamond.
Yep.
What's up, Scott Diamond?
Also, Ian Mosley, he says, sounds like one of the promotions I'm at now in Texas until they get really involved. It's Sneak Attack.
Fans.
I'll tell you, and then we just continued training. So, I mean, we would train. But here's the thing. We were training, but then we would go sit in a crowd on the show nights, because we still had to keep up that, that whole kayfabe of we wasn't doing it. And so we kept training. I remember, I'm glad I broke in that way because, Purple Haze got trained in Mid-South area in Mississippi, and then he moved up here. So he kind of, he taught me that Southern style and how we did things and how we done all this. And I would go on the road with him. And I remember I was 16, I had my permit, and I would drive him to shows. And he was like, listen, I know you ain't supposed to drive past a certain time at night.
Or not out of state.
Right. So he would be like, if we get pulled over, just tell him that I got hurt and, we're trying to get back home and whatever. So I would drive him. I didn't give a shit.
Exactly.
I was living the dream.
You thought, hell, I'm doing something now.
I would carry his bags in, just, trying to, just to break in and do that.
I would do the same thing.
So, we went everywhere, and I got the opportunity to kind of go places and see things and see what it was. And I remember my first match, I had just turned 17, and it was in Indiana. And it was from this huge black man from Mississippi that Greg had brought up. And, I mean, huge. I mean, just built like a brick shit house. And it was somebody that he had worked with a lot and trained the same way he had. So that was my first match, and I remember he chopped me so hard that I could have took my chest to a jeweler and said, make this man a ring. And they could have actually because you could see the creases of his finger on the bruises in my chest. And I remember we had Buddy Landell that night, and his original trainer had come up, and it was once I was in, I was hooked, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, because once you get in the ring, based on training, it's different. When you're out there in front of, no matter if it's 10 people for the first time, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're lost.
So because the adrenaline,
you just
and
lose
the excitement, it's just like, what the stage
so
fright, all that shit
I kept working, and I remember I had more matches in Kentucky before I turned 18 illegally than probably who knows how many people. But we would travel to Eastern Kentucky, because we knew Jack Kearns, the commissioner at the time, he wasn't coming to Eastern Kentucky because he wasn't going to drive down there. We'd go to Western Kentucky. They'd let me work. They'd let me work down here, and then they'd fudge the sheets that they sent in. See, this is statute of limitations done expired on this, but I remember that I would work under a hood a lot, And that way, if you worked under a hood, you take that hood off, go sit in the crowd, nobody know who you were.
Exactly.
And there was a whole psychology. I did my first few years under a hood, and the reason why that you do that in the mindset, everything, is it teaches you how to react with your body better. So that back in the old days, that's why they would put masks on guys when they first started. First off, they didn't have a name yet, and they could mess up, they could do whatever, but it also taught you didn't have your face. So it taught you how to react with your body.
Yeah.
So that way, when you took that off, all you got to do is put the facial expressions in, and you're rolling. So, I mean, it's just an old thing, I think, today that's forgotten. You don't see a lot of that anymore. Yeah. But there's a whole psychology, but I hated that mask. It was so hot.
Oh, I bet.
And but there was a trick to it.
Probably moved around. You probably couldn't see.
Yeah, there was a trick, and I forget who told me how to do this. It was a guy that I forget. It was an old veteran, but I forget who told me to do this. He said, "What you do is you take that mask and you put it in ice water, and you let it soak in there before you get ready to wear it, and then you take it and you keep it where it's wet and cold." And then when you put that mask on, you wet it down again, and it'll keep your body temperature cool.
Oh, okay.
And I did that, and it worked.
Oh, sure.
So I would get that mask. I'd take cold water and pour it over it, and it would keep me cool. Yeah. And I got all my masks from Adrian Street. He was making masks, and he had the best mask at the time. I mean, they were perfect. But I'd get every mask. I got them all from him. Yeah. And you know, I remember calling him on the phone, telling him what I wanted, and just listening to Exotic Adrian Street. And, you know, he's, "Hey, mate, yeah, we do this." You know, he's talking and telling us what we do and what we, you know. It was funny just to listen and talk to a legend on the phone about a wrestling mask. Yeah, yeah. But, you know, those days are just, it's so lost nowadays. Yeah. You know, that art of back in the day and breaking in, it's just so different. You can go about anywhere now and find a wrestling school. Oh, yeah. And you could, back in the day, there wasn't many schools. You would go to a person and you would ask them, and then they would break you in. So you actually got broke in with a person. It wasn't so much of a school when I go to a school and I have a group of guys. So, you know, I remember we got a little tobacco barn in Cynthiana, Kentucky. There was a place where we could train, and we would have to go over there.
Where was this at?
In Cynthiana.
Oh, Cynthiana.
In those old tobacco warehouses. Uh-huh. We'd have to go over there. We'd have to put up the ring. We'd train in that hot-ass tobacco warehouse. We'd have to tear the ring down.
Was it a wooden ring?
Oh, yeah. No. This was steel one. This was actually, he got the steel one. I'll tell you the funny story about this ring. The guy that trained him had Mid-South Wrestling in Mississippi, and he had a steel ring with a spring in the middle. Nice ring. And the people that had been in that ring was like Cactus Jack, Abdul the Butcher, Rock and Roll Express, all those guys. Because what they would do was they would hit Cornette's territory, and then they would go to John Horton's territory in Mississippi. It'd be kind of their loop. So they would go down there, so the same guys traveled. So, I mean, he had the same Smoky Mountain guys that would go down there and work for him. But I remember the beams in the middle were bent because Abdul the Butcher had took a monkey flip from Cactus Jack, and he landed and it bent the center beam, so we'd have to flip them to kind of get them straightened back out. But one of the cooler things that we did when he got it to my house, and that's where we stored it in my building at first, the ring posts had empty holes, right? So what they would do is they'd use their blade and they'd dump it in that hole. Okay. So the first thing we did was we dumped those poles out, and there were so many blades. Oh, and I don't even know. There's no way to tell. Yeah, there's no way to tell whose they were.
You could clone some people.
Yeah, there was, because those ring poles were so deep.
Yeah.
And I remember there were so many blades
like
in
hundreds?
those poles. Oh, there was at least 20 or 30, 40 maybe. Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a bunch.
All the DNA that's on those.
So, I mean, there was no telling what legendary blood was on there.
Yeah. Real quick, Ian Mosley sent us another 50 stars. He said 100% knowledge right here.
Thanks, right. Ian. Ian Mosley's a big fan of us. He watches us all the time. Thanks, Ian, for such great support, man.
So, you know, that was cool to see. But then we would train in that steel ring, and that steel ring, man. When you've worked a wooden ring, and then you've worked a steel ring, you see the difference.
Steel ring is a lot better, right?
Because if you haven't worked in a ring with a spring, it's a lot different than a ring that's wood, because a wooden ring usually don't have a spring. Yeah. And I'll tell you, there was a couple times where you had to get used to that steel ring with that spring because you had to recoil. And I remember there was one time I was in Frankfurt. I took a big bump off, landed right in the middle, bounced up. Everything was good, but I forgot about that recoil, and it smacked me in the back of the head, and I was out.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, you got to kind of learn how to do that. So, we kept on, and I wrestled forever. I've wrestled with, Zodiac was one of my tag partners, and, I mean, me and him had this, it seems like, he was, everywhere we went, they put us together. By accident, but we were already together most places anyway because we looked the same.
Yeah.
And, we had that dark gimmick. But, I mean, I'd wrestle with everybody. I mean, I went to Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is one of my most favorite places to ever wrestle. Because those people down there ain't no telling how many riots almost started in Eastern Kentucky. I'll tell you a funny story.
About a bunch of that stuff.
There was one incident. I wasn't even 18 yet, and they were letting me wrestle down there because, again, the commissioner ain't gonna come that far.
Yeah.
So I was wrestling, and we were down there, and for some reason, that night, it was for Hardcore Championship Wrestling. Daryl Fugate was the promoter, and I love Daryl to this day because he gave me one of my first opportunities and was very loyal. He was always a man of his word. And so, for some reason, they had a Louisville Slugger Battle Royal where, it was kind of not like a Battle Royal. It was more like a lumberjack match. But they put wrestlers around the rings with Louisville Slugger baseball bats. And if somebody come out of the ring, well, then they could hit them with the bat.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay. Well, they had teamed me with Bo James that night. And Bo's, huge Smoky Mountain, Memphis guy, been all over the place.
Still wrestling.
Yeah,
We just
he's
saw him down in Hazard.
great talent,
Months.
great book of knowledge. I love Bo James. But I remember that night they put us together. And this was before I did Black Rain. And I was just doing something called Roadhouse, and it was just open face kind of thing. But we were together. So we tag teamed. We did whatever. We were in the main event. And before we went out there, Bo said, we're going to steal the valet, and we're going to take her out of the building and leave. And I was like, I don't care. I mean, I don't give, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
You're the
Let's do it.
veteran. You tell me what to do. We do it.
This shit.
Yeah, let's do it. So I remember we got to valet. Tons of heat was already going on. And we got in the car. We took off. And that just set that place off like dynamite. And for some reason, the fans got these bats. So,
the Louisville Slugger
right,
bats.
and they had called the police. So they called the police and said, hey, this happened. Well, it turns out that the valet, she wasn't even 18 yet.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
So Bo was in the car with two underage individuals, myself and her, and his manager, which was an older man. And the police stopped us, and they said, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, they were like, this is all wrestling. I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So we got going again. We were turning around. We were going to take her back, drop her off. When we pulled into the parking lot, the crowd had come out and they had those Louisville Slugger baseball bats.
Oh, wow.
And so Bo was like, we can't stop here.
No,
So
we gotta
we're
go back.
going to
We
get the car beat up.
Yeah.
So we went out again. Police stopped us again. Bo said, will you please take her and take her back because we can't go back there yet.
Yeah.
So I remember another police officer, they escorted us back. And we got in, got our bags, and they actually escorted us out of town to the
Oh, wow.
to the end there. But Bo taught me a lot about getting heat and how to do it that way. And once you get that little taste of
I'm
doing
sure.
that, there was another time that I was working for Daryl Fugate, and I'd been in the business for some time now, and I was kind of his top heel. I was doing the Black Ring thing then. And when I got there that night, he said, hey, he's like, I want you to go out there and cut a promo. And I want you to tell these people that you're going to smack them harder than Dale Earnhardt smacked the wall.
Oh.
Now, here's the thing. This was a week after his death.
Oh,
So this is very fresh. So
was a
I was
big
like,
deal.
I don't give a shit. Whatever you want me to do.
Yeah.
You're paying me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Tell me what to do. So I went out there. And before I went out there, I was like, Daryl, how much security do you got? And he was like,
got a
well,
couple guys.
He was like, I've got my mom. And it was literally his mother was the only,
mom
because
was a good
back in the
security
day, there was a certain amount of security you had to have,
Yeah.
part of the rules. So a buddy of mine, Cody Matthews, rode with us. He was kind of younger in the business, and I
Yeah.
said, "Hey, you're gonna have to be security with this because
We've had Cody on the show.
I don't know what's gonna happen."
Yeah.
So he was doing ref work, he was doing security work, but we had to require 2 security guards. Okay, that's what it was at the time. And I went out there, cut the promo. They started coming off the stands toward me. But the problem was I was on a stage. I wasn't in the ring. I was on a stage, and there was no way to get off the stage. So that's why, as a heel, in those photographs, you always see me with those spikes on. And I always had that one large center spike that looked like an ice pick. That was always what I called my mark killers. Because if something happened, I knew that I could use that to get where I needed to get to.
Yeah.
I'm almost like a porcupine. I can use those to defend myself. So my buddy was with me, TJ Lightning at the time, and we were teaming, and he was up there with me, and he's like, "What the hell are we going to do?" I was like, "We're going to get out of here the best we can." So
Yeah.
luckily we kind of got out, but I mean, that's another night that's, when you can do that.
Had your asshole pucked
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Well, I was like, whatever. We're probably going to take a few of these people with us,
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Before
yep.
you continue, just want to say something for me and Mosley. Is that we just had a lumberjack match where fans were put in a raffle and got to surround the ring with leather straps.
Yeah, we've had that happen. That used to happen all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't have to be licensed or have anything back then.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I wrestled a lot in Eastern Kentucky, but the only closer heat, and when I started booking in Lawrenceburg, in the same building that Tony Presley books
New
now,
South, yeah.
I was booking WCCW.
Wildcat
Wildcat Championship Wrestling, and I booked there for a long time. And I really, we can get into that in a little bit, but to get back on track with the HARDWAY thing, I was in the business for a long time, and then basically my bump card got full, and I seen that I was better suited being behind the scenes,
Yeah.
production and booking and things like that, and that's what I enjoyed.
Yeah.
But so if I didn't have that mentality of being in the business, 15, 16, 20 years, whatever it is, at that point when I started doing HARDWAY, I think it would have been harder for me because I didn't know how the business worked if I was just a regular filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I knew how to do that. So
when did the filmmaking spark hit you? Like, when did you
I'd always wanted to do that.
pick up a camera? Like, when?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. I'd always wanted to make documentaries.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I used, and the paranormal stuff we can get into later, but I used the paranormal to supply me with my equipment. So, I was very, blessed to be able to go out and do conventions and events, and it gave me money. So I would basically take that money, and one of my biggest theories and one of my biggest things that I still do to this day is I invest in myself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make documentaries, but I didn't have the equipment. So I bought cameras, I bought lights, I bought sound equipment, I bought editing equipment, an editing computer, all of that. I just invested in myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And
that's kind of what we did here at the podcast.
yeah, and that's what you got to do. And I'm self-taught. I mean, I've never.
Oh, me too.
I never went to film school, but here's what I tell people. People are like, "What, did you go to film school?" No. And here's the reason. I think that we've gotten so wrapped up into the whole you have to have formal training into something. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The original filmmakers, they didn't go to film school.
No.
They learned from other people, and that's what I did. I had a chance to work with Nick Groff, and he's just an absolute great, video person and production person. He produced and he edited and he filmed the whole first season of Ghost Adventures when they did that show.
Okay.
He made the first documentary before they got picked up by the network.
Got that right.
So, I mean, he was very good at that. So I just learned from him, and I learned from others. And I had that opportunity, and then I started doing my own thing. And then did Larry's documentary, did Murder in the Moonlight, which is my true crime documentary. And then HARDWAY was kind of my next thing. And with HARDWAY, to kind of get in there, I was like, how do I break into this scene? Because I'd never been in the deathmatch scene.
Yeah.
I'd never worked those matches. I've done whatever, bled and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And but I'd never done like hardcore deathmatch scene all the time. So I was like, okay, I got to get into the scene. So I just started talking to people. And
yeah,
I remember that
that's the best way to do something.
it
Just
is.
start talking and get into it. That's like we did the podcast. I just bought some podcast
Yep.
equipment and taught myself how to do this,
Yep.
and we're
Yes.
3 years into this now.
That's
and
like me with booking guests. I just go up to them.
That's the best way to do it.
Johnny was sitting on his couch when Sean brung him to one of the shows, and I met him at a wrestling show. Wouldn't hardly talk, and now he's the
Hey, won't shut up.
he's the wrestling. He won't shut up now. Like I said, he's a wrestling podcast god now.
Love to drink.
I remember one of the first things I did was I knew John Gray, and John Gray's a referee that had been around a long time. And when I wrestled for BBW and Joe Bailey and those guys, John was a referee, and I'd known John forever. And John was working for Ian, and he was basically one of the best deathmatch referees you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, listen, he's like, if you want to film and get in, because I went back and to Prince of Death matches, and we went down there to watch Mike Roach because Mike was in the tournament. So I'd known Mike forever. He's a good friend of Larry, so me and Larry went down there, and me and Larry and King Hustle, we all went down there. We got real drunk beforehand, and I may or may not have thrown up in the truck stop bathroom somewhere along the way, but, that's a story for another time. But I remember that, John told me that night, he's like, you still plan to do this documentary? And I said, yeah, that's my plan. I'm just trying to kind of get it together. He's like, if you want to come to West Virginia next weekend, VOW is having a deathmatch tournament. So I was like, okay. He's like, I can get you in there, get you filming, get you going, and that'll get you rolling. And I had no money for this, no budget for it. Yeah. But I knew I could get to West Virginia. So, I went there, and I remember Roach got booked on that show too in the tournament. But what I did was I seen who they had on the tournament. I just reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this. Would you want to, do this, do that? And G Raver was one of the first I talked to. I talked to Schlack, talked to a lot of those guys. And then I went and I filmed that show. But when I filmed that show, it was basically to cut together a trailer for the future that I could use to get it out there.
Yeah, to promote.
So, VOW was having shows consistently, and I knew I could go there and get those interviews, and I didn't have to travel to Jersey or Philly all the time. So, VOW helped me kind of get those interviews.
Yeah.
And if you watch the documentary, any of those interviews that's on that raw wall, kind of, peel and paint, that's all in West Virginia.
Okay.
And there's another part in the documentary where you see John Wayne Murdoch get hurt on his shoulder, and that wound was literally deep enough where you could go up to your knuckles in his shoulder. And the funny part about that was he's getting a little bucket of water dumped over his shoulder to clean it out. And the funny thing is that's all they had. That's all the running water they really had. They didn't have a working shower. It was an old school that didn't have air. They didn't have the toilets were good enough to pee in, but you couldn't shit in them. Yeah. And then they had no working shower. So they had that little bucket they would fill up in the sink and kind of clean off with. And so I remember, that was one of the wildest things. But I wanted to capture that rawness. I wanted to capture that underground culture. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do. And one of the best things was, after I started going, I would just, I'd go to Jersey a couple times.
What was the crowds like there in West Virginia?
Oh, they absolutely loved it. I'll tell you right now,
like 300 or 400, or
oh yeah, it packed the place. And here's the thing. Deathmatch wrestling at a time when you may go down the road at an indie show and they may have 50 people, they're packing the buildings. They were selling out. And it's because the fans were looking for that. They wanted that realism. They wanted that that raw atmosphere. So I remember my first Jersey trip, I got to go to Combat Zone Wrestling and film their Tournament of Death. I got in that. I got to go and I got to film at Matt Tremont's for the first time at his Hustlemania. I got to film a couple other little things there, but I just, I tried to pack all the filming I could into the weekend. And it's funny because I didn't ever go alone. Alex Angel, he wrestled in WCCW for me, and he don't wrestle as much anymore, but he would always travel with me to Jersey and these West Virginia trips because I didn't want to go by myself. Yeah. So, there were times I'd go to West Virginia and John Wayne Murdoch would ride with me. So I was literally traveling with the boys. So Murdoch would ride with me to West Virginia. Murdoch would take me to Ian's, whatever. So I was in the car with the guys.
Yeah.
And it was, I think being in the business like I was helped with that because they just see me as one of the boys.
Yeah.
And so then
you'd already been a wrestler
yeah,
already.
So, I mean, I knew how to work it. And I would introduce myself. I would always kind of be away from everything. But, I just filmed. I filmed as much as I could. I captured some very beautiful moments. And, it turned out to be great. I got the opportunity to interview everybody I wanted to. Nick Gage was probably one of the hardest ones to get. Masada was next to that because Masada he's from Texas, so he wasn't in this area. And I didn't have the money to travel to Texas. So Murdoch contacted me and he said Masada's going to be in Chicago next month. He's like, I can get you into the show if you can get the interview. So then I had to connect with that. And it's kind of funny because me and Masada kind of stayed in touch after the interview. And he actually made the knife that I carry in the woods when I go looking for cryptids and things. So it's a custom. Yeah. It's one of a kind, Masada made blade. And that's what he does. That's one of his businesses. He makes knives and weapons and things. And he's an amazing knife works person. But I've got that knife from him. And got that interview, got the Nick Gage interview, cut it all together, put it out there. And the Deathmatch fans loved it. I mean, they thought it was a true tribute to the scene.
Yeah.
And so I mean, it's still to this day, it's one of my favorite pieces of work. It's one thing that I watch it and I can't believe that I made it because of the way it turned out. And it's just everything got into motion, everything worked out. And there were times when I would glue people up. I'd be in the back at some of these shows and there may be somebody bleeding and I'd glue them up because they maybe didn't have EMTs, so I'd super glue them shut. And you get to see some of that. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was on the road with in that Chicago weekend. I got on the road and I went with Aiden Blackheart and Sean P. the ref, rest in peace. And then I got with Akira, which is now went on to MLW, and he's all over the place. But he had just broke in. He was just starting death matches. And we were all traveling that weekend. So we stayed in Chicago area, did that show. We were coming to Indianapolis the next day for a tournament. And I remember Akira got really bad messed up because I was sitting there filming and they brought out these plates of glass, these panes of glass. So I was like, okay. I was like, those don't look tempered. Because if you don't use tempered glass in a death match, you're gonna die. Yeah. And so I was like, those don't look tempered. And so I was like, okay. And this is a newer company. So they brought them out. First bump through. Boom. They're not tempered glass.
Oh, wow.
They're panes of glass.
Oh,
and
shit.
they're not tempered at all. So they didn't shatter. They just broke in huge shards. First bump, huge slit on his wrist, bleeding everywhere. I was like, God.
That's dangerous.
So it kept going because he was, green enough at the deathmatch scene. He didn't really know. So he kept going. Kept getting cut. He had this huge laceration on his thigh. All this stuff was going on. So I went to the back. I stopped filming, went to the back, and I was waiting on him to come through the curtain because they didn't really have EMTs. So I was like, we got to get that under control or we can get you somewhere because he's riding with us. And I was like, I really don't want to spend hours in an ER in Indianapolis. I'd like to go home. So I glued him up. We patched him up, got him in the car, and took him home. But I remember that show, and that was AIW in Indianapolis. Great promotion, by the way. They still do some amazing things. There was so much blood on that show, you could smell it. You could smell the copper in the air. It had that copper smell, and I was like, "This was a violent show." But we just being on the road with guys like that and seeing that kind of stuff that stuff right there will, it's wild to see that and see what happens. And I was also privileged that to meet Chris Jericho and go on his podcast through the HARDWAY documentary. I'd known him and hooked up with him through Nick and through the paranormal side of things. So I sent Jericho a screener of HARDWAY, and he's like, we need to have you on. So it was me, Pondo, and G Raver was on Jericho's podcast.
Hell yeah.
And then I stayed in touch with Jericho. I still talk to him, about helping with guests and things to this day. But the cool part about it was when he was doing that match with Nick Gage, he asked me to kind of send him some matches and things where he could kind of
Chris Jericho.
to see what he wanted to do with the match. And so it was kind of cool to kind of, because he didn't really know about that scene until he seen HARDWAY.
Yeah.
And then he kind of shared it around. So, he let Mock see it. He let other people see it. And so then we did the show and we did all that. I've been on there twice. I was on there again.
They're doing a lot of that stuff right now. Like they like to use screwdrivers a lot for some reason right now.
I don't know.
Forks and screwdrivers.
They used a bed of nails. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But,
I saw that.
I'd love to know who built the bed of nails because I
think it was John Moxley.
That is a craft. That is a expertise that you have to do it right.
Oh, I'm sure.
And if you noticed in that show, I seen just one bump from it where Omega hit it and it bounced off and it caught him in the shoulder. Well, that's the exact thing you don't want to happen.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool to see him use that, but that's cool to see that. And I was on Jericho's show again with the Anderson Hotel for the ghost stuff. He actually came in and we recorded it in the hotel, and it's just it's weird how you can network and get here and get there. And, And I know that there's been other famous folks that have seen HARDWAY, but there's no telling who. Yeah. But I loved for them to see it because to me I wanted it to be a tribute to that community and to that style of wrestling.
So where does people find? Where would you find HARDWAY?
You can watch it. Smart Mark Video has it. You can get the Blu-ray. You can get the DVD. You can stream it on there. So if you go to Smart Mark Video, they do still have that. Now, I'm looking at doing a HARDWAY sequel, and I've been looking at it for years, but it's got to be the right time, and I want to kind of revisit and show where everybody is. But eventually, I'll probably get some more copies made, and I'll probably self-sell it again. But right now, Smart Mark Video is the way you can watch it.
Smart Mark Videos, guys.
Yeah, and then if you want to watch,
we got our own.
Yeah, I brought a copy. I don't have very many copies left.
You already signed it, though, didn't you?
I did, it is signed.
Okay,
so
you already signed it. I was going to say, we'll get you to sign it.
Yeah, it is signed, but that is one of the last physical copies that I have.
Jeff came with gifts. He gave us this. He gave us
some deathmatch dog tags.
Yep.
Sean, this one's yours.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But if you want to watch Little to Legendary or you want to watch Murder in the Moonlight, you can go to Amazon. Those are on Amazon. Now, HARDWAY didn't... They
didn't want
Amazon.
Amazon didn't want it?
I sent it to Amazon, and they were like, absolutely not.
Absolutely
because there's
not.
a whole sequence of injury. It's the injury portion that got me kicked from Amazon. So it's banned from Amazon, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's a whole sequence where I show the whole Nick Gage incident where, he's bleeding out, and they're doing all that, and it shows the airlift footage, and then him talking about it. And all that. I'd say that's probably what get it kicked off Amazon was the whole brutality of it. But my whole defense to that was like, you have movies that are much more graphic.
Oh yeah, like
you
movies.
have faces of death and things on there.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? But they won't budge on.
They probably have some kind of ownership in those movies.
And I refuse to edit it. I refuse to cut it
why
down.
Why would you cut your movie?
My argument to them was, this is what it is. So I can't water it down. If I water it down, then it's not justice to the scene.
And it's not authentic.
They have war movie documentaries that they don't edit,
Yeah, so I said it's documentary film. It's reality. It's not like this is gore for the sake of gore. It's what it is.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is.
Exactly. And if you edit anything out,
guys, I got to step out for just a second. Let me, Johnny, take over.
All right. But yeah, if you had edited out anything, a single piece of footage, you would have already deleted the product.
Right. And I felt by editing any of it that it would be an injustice to the guys that do that. So let's say, these guys are out there putting their life on the line. I mean, I've seen guys bleeding a lot and being really hurt. And and I've been cut up, being out there filming that stuff. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize, if I were to cut anything down, then that's basically saying, well, I'm going to have to, confide to the man and say, let's not do this. And I'm not going to do that. I mean, a documentary is supposed to be as real can get.
Exactly.
And that's the whole standpoint that I make when I do documentary films is I go down that path and it's going to be exactly the way that it should be. And I'll tell you, there's a really cool quote that I kind of live by as a filmmaker. And I believe it was Alfred Hitchcock said it the best way. He said, in movies, the director is God. He said, in documentaries, God is the director. And all you have to do is capture the shot. Yep. So what you're doing is the moment is there. And you have to have the eye to capture it. Like, there's some really beautiful moments in HARDWAY that when I seen it and I was there and I was filming, I was like, that's a magical moment. You know, there's one where G-Raver's coming out of the woods. It's in the trailer, I believe. And it's Tournament of Death, and he's coming out of the curtain, but he's backlit by the woods. And it's just that moment where it's like, that's beautiful. Right. And I thought there was such a diversity when you would have outside deathmatch tournaments in the woods or something like that, where it was just the sky and the brutality, and it was just almost like an orchestra. It was almost like some type of opera.
Exactly.
So, you know, I didn't want to. I refused to cut anything,
because if you had, it wouldn't be.
Yeah, it wouldn't
true
be what it
to
is.
The story.
It wouldn't be true story, and I refused to do that, and I still won't do that. And one technique that I love to do is, and Larry says this a lot when we're filming. He's like, I didn't even know you filmed that, and that's what I want. I don't want you to know that I'm filming you. If I'm trying to capture footage, I want you to be as normal as possible.
Yeah, you want to catch the authentic you.
So I mean, I'll just run the camera and park it there, and I capture those moments. Like, some of the best moments that I got from Little to Legendary is just Larry sitting there getting ready for a match, or, you know, there's this beautiful shot where he's in the basement of the arena in Indiana, and he's getting ready to go out. But he's sitting there against this nice, beautiful wooden wall. And it's just a side profile shot of him with his hair wet, kind of some steam coming off because it was kind of cold outside. But, I mean, those shots are magical. You can't get that. So, exactly. You know, that's what I go for. You know, that's what I shoot at.
That's the best kind.
And, you know, you capture those beautiful moments, and, you know, other people are like, oh, that's weird, or, you know what, you see beauty in things, but you got to know when you're going to get the shot. When you see magic, you got to stick with it.
You got a new fan, because Ian Mosley said he's got to check this out now. And he
definitely check it out.
Again.
Yep. HARDWAYFilm.com is the webpage that should take you to the links, but I don't know how alive those links are, but Smart Mark Video will get you there.
That's what I'm talking about, because you're right. You've been filming great shots. You're right. That's ours.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the cool part about that was I had the opportunity after that to do the production for PTW, and when they had the building in Paris, and then in Georgetown, Larry asked me to do their hype videos and their video packages, and me and DJ Otis Badass created some of the most beautiful works of art with no budget. And we would play these things, and people were just blown away by them. And it's some of my best work, but it's some of the work that you will never see in public. Yeah. Because they're all copyrighted songs and things. But it's just, they're great. But I love doing that production side of things with wrestling, because it keeps me tuned up, where when I do documentaries, I'm not rusty. Yeah. So I'm editing, and I'm getting creative, and I'm filming, and then I can keep on, you know, rolling. So I like doing that. I love doing it because I could instruct the guys, the younger guys. All Larry would do is say, you know, go do their promo. So we go into the studio we had set up there, and I would help them. I'd get them, I'd coach them, I'd get them to where they needed to be, and we'd just create magic.
Best kind of promo teacher.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done many classes on, you know, I was a big guy on creating gimmicks and things like that. So, I mean, there's been many times I've done seminars with Larry's students and things, and I like to try to help guys, and I like to work with guys, and like, you know, Nate Hewitt and that works for New South.
Evil Nate.
He funny story, I was booking in Lawrenceburg, and I booked Alex Angel because, you know, he was, you know, buff guy, and I wanted to draw the ladies in. So he would bring guys with him. So Nate was one of those guys, and he really didn't have much of a gimmick, so we put him in the rock and roll thing, and he made that. So that's where it came in. And then Brandon Taggart was just a guy riding with him. And I remember the first time when Brandon Taggart came in, he had his gear in a Papa John's delivery bag. Yep. And
Wow.
people are like, this kid, what the hell's this kid doing? But I seen him, and I was like, he's going to be here. I don't have much of a budget.
Yeah.
So I put him and another guy, Marcus Mathers. I had them do a frat boys gimmick because they really couldn't afford a lot of nice gear, but they could afford khaki shorts and they could afford, cut off polos, and they were frat boys, and that's what they did. So every time
magic with what you had.
So every time I book somewhere, I don't just go off of what I have. And I would bring guys in, much like Memphis would, and I would say, I want you to be this role. Can you do this?
Yeah.
And they would say, yeah. I mean, because your gimmick that you have ain't going to work for me.
Yeah.
So you're not established anywhere. I know that I can bring you in and make you somebody else, and we can draw money with it. And that's what we did. And I would do that with many guys, like Nate Cross. We did the rock and roll thing, and that worked for him. And then now he's evolved into the Nate Hewitt thing.
Cropsy.
Yep. So I mean, that's great. He's got that going. And then there were other guys that we would work with, and we would bring them in, and we would tweak their gimmicks, and it's fun to do that for guys. And I remember, one of the first people I did that with was I was actually booking Glensboro. And there was a guy came in, and
So you started in Glensboro, and then you ended up booking there.
I was booking there. So, I wanted to help Russell out that owned the building because of phenomenal cheeseburgers, but I don't think you can ever get them anymore. But, I wanted to help him out because, I'd known Russell for years. So I started booking the shows, and I'd never booked before, but I knew I could probably do it.
Yeah.
Because I'd watched it so long.
I wish I could have gotten some phenomenal cheeseburgers.
Oh, God, it was so good.
Oh, yeah. It sounded phenomenal.
Oh, it was so good.
Real quick before we finish the story, Kyle Macker had to say, he said, guys, be sure to subscribe to the Appalachian Mountain Wrestling on YouTube and check out our Kingdom Mountains preview show, episode 3, tomorrow night.
There you go.
So, tomorrow at noon.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tomorrow at noon.
So what we want to do there is there was a guy came in. He wanted to be a pretty boy, but his family and his roots.
He was ugly as fuck.
Well, no, he actually was. He would have been a great pretty boy.
Yeah.
But he had trained there before, and he was a banker, like an investment banker,
Yeah.
So I was like, "Can you be an Iraqi?" And he was like, his family was actually Lebanese or something, I believe.
Yeah.
And so he was like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess." I was like, because this was when Saddam Hussein back then was like the main villain.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, "I want you to be an Iraqi."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay." I was like, "I don't want anybody to see you, so you go home and then you come back," much like they did with Kamala back in the Memphis days. Yep. So then he went and he got him some military fatigues and he got him an Iraqi flag, and he would come out there and everything he spoke was not even their language, but it sounded like it.
Yeah.
And those people in that crowd had no clue, but they wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
And it was Ali Baez, and Ali went on to OVW and he did that gimmick, and he was with Global Force and he did that gimmick, and he wrestled many very famous patriots under that gimmick.
I started Glensboro.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But then he got it, and it worked.
Yeah, he's like, this shit works.
Yeah, so it worked for him, and I remember that, it was people hated him. But the whole payoff was, you had to have that patriot, and you did it. But I remember he thanked me for that. He was like, "Thank you for giving me that," because it was such a thing that got me where I wanted to be. But I like to do that for guys. I remember Rob Conway, his nephew Sean Conway. I'd worked with Rob a lot. Me and him would wrestled some, and he'd come up and wrestle for us. So he knew I kind of had it mentally at WCCW, and he knew what I was doing. He was like, "Listen, Sean's got this gimmick idea called the Butcher, and he don't really know what to do with it. We don't know. OVW's kind of giving him, dragging him around." So I was like, "Yeah, I can do it." So he said, "Come see him." So I remember me and TJ Lightning went to OVW, and we watched Sean work. It was one of the student shows down there. And I remember we were watching this match, and during the match, he was teaming with Rob Conway, and Sean had something go on with his tights. Like, they didn't bust open, but I don't know if his underwear busted open underneath or what. But he had these pink tights on, and you could blatantly see his dick and nuts
Oh my God.
through those pink tights. And I looked over. I remember looking over at TJ, and I was like, what in the fuck are we going to do with this? You know, this is what we got to work with.
Yeah.
You know, we've got his dick and nuts blatantly in front of all these people. Like, the crotch wasn't ripped out, but there was no imagination there.
Yeah.
So he had already wrestled at WCCW as Sean Conway, as Rob's nephew. So I was like, I got to take this guy, and we've got to fix all this and make him somebody new.
Turn chicken shit into chicken salad.
That's right. And so, I mean, Sean was good in the ring. He was OVW trained. He had trained under Dinsmore and all those guys. So Rip even. So he was good. He knew what he was doing, but it wasn't what he wanted to do. So what I did was I brought him in. I had him team with Rob again, and we did a whole thing where I was Black Rain as the heel at the time, and it's almost like we got a spell in on him, and like we changed his mind. He came out as the Butcher, and the Butcher I kind of based on the old like Bart Sawyer Moondog type thing, where we let him out on a chain. We had a whistle. He was all bearded and unkempt, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So he's basically a dog, and that's what we would do. He'd come out as the Butcher like that, and he was just a wild man, and it worked, and the people bought it, and
That's right.
they forgot that he was Sean Conway, and they forgot he was Rob Conway's nephew, and he rolled on with the Butcher, and
they
he did
forgot-
that for many, many years.
And they forgot about his dick and ball.
That's right. Nobody was there for that, thank God. But that's like another story. When I was booking WCCW, Jimmy Lamb's nephew Bubba, he wanted to wrestle, but I was like, Bubba, you don't really have anything that we can go off of. So we were at that same OVW show, and they were selling these masks, these wrestling masks, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I got an idea. So what we did was, I forget what heel it was that was giving Bubba. It was like, you know, bullying him. You know, you ain't gonna amount to nothing at the WCCW show every week. And it may have been Nate. Honestly, I think it may have been Nate. And so he's telling him, you know, you ain't gonna amount to nothing, blah 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 blah. So we had this whole show designed around launching Bubba's gimmick, and the whole show was a Christmas show, and the fans could bring a present for their favorite wrestler. Okay, so that the whole damn show was there to launch Bubba Lamb's gimmick.
Yep.
All right, so gifts, and everybody opening gifts. The Hills would get gifts, and it'd be like, you know, coal or something, whatever. Yeah. And so I remember Bubba had gotten really bullied that night, and he had stormed off, you know, like upset, stormed off. And the next week, we were like, Bubba, you didn't get to open your gift. And, you know, somebody got this for you. He was ready to quit. He was out in the ring. He was going to quit. And I said, Bubba, you haven't, because I was playing the general manager role at the time, because I had to book and I had to get it all under control. And so I said, Bubba, you didn't open your gift. At least open this gift. And so what he did was he opened the gift, and inside was a mask. And I was like, I don't know. We was confused. And I said, well, put it on. And so when he put this mask on, the music started to play, and Bubba began to dance. But the magic was in the mask. So it's like the Mask movie.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the mask transformed Bubba Lamb into a whole different person. And it kind of made him out of his shell, and it made him, you know, out there. And he started to dance, and he started to be fun, you know, with the crowd. And there was a song we used for the mask. So every time the mask come on, they knew that it was dancing time.
Yeah.
So we did that, and he feuded with Nate, and there was a whole dance off, but the power was in that mask. And other people would put it on, and the music would kick on, and they would start to dance. So it's like that's you know, genius. I think Scott may have even danced one time, but it's like, you know, it's like that mask, you know, possessed them to be, you know, a party guy.
Where's the mask at now?
Oh, who knows? Bubba probably still
got
uses
magic
it somewhere. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's
And
still.
speaking of Scott said, I know there's got to be a couple of good Scott.
Oh, there he is, and I'm getting to those. But that's what we did. You can take a person, and Bubba didn't have a lot of ability, but he could get through.
Yeah.
And you can take a person, and that's where I really enjoyed the bookers. Like, I liked listening to Kevin Sullivan. I like listening to Dutch Mantel. I like listening to Jerry Jarrett because those guys were just brilliant.
Yeah.
But what they learned was you take what you have and you work with it. So, you see something in a guy and you're like, he can pull it off. Like, I loved the story of Kamala because Sugar Bear Harris had been wrestling for a long time and he'd come to Memphis to try to get a job. And Jerry Jarrett and them seen him. They were like, has anybody else seen you? And they were like, no. They were like, you go home and then we'll call you.
Yeah.
And they had him beat Kamala. And they went right in Jerry Jarrett's farm and filmed that original promo of him walking through there.
To get this fog,
yeah.
Do some dry icing.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what they did was they filmed that, and Kamala rode that gimmick for decades.
Talking to the end of the mic when you.
So, that's what you do. You got to take guys and they got to believe in you. And as a booker, if they don't believe in you and your ability, well, then you won't have them. So it's like a team. So whenever you see I'm a Paul Heyman guy, I'm a Jim Cornette guy, but basically what that's meaning was he took those guys and made them something.
Facts.
And they have to believe in you as a booker. And then if they believe in you as a booker, you'll all draw money together. But one of the I still probably hold the record in that building that he's in down there, and it's about 350 was what we had in there, and that was with no names. That was just off storylines. I mean, the storylines were so good, and we had those people trained so well, they called the police sometimes. They called the ambulance sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story before I get into the Scott ones. Sean Bain took a bump into this pole on the outside of the ring. Pole's still there.
Yeah.
Same place. And he was laying there selling it. And I didn't know he was going to do this, but Sean had a history of back issues. And so he's laying there. And somebody called the ambulance. Right? Because they knew his back. You know, he wasn't ever going to wrestle again. His back's tore up. So I went out there and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm okay. I was like, well, you're not now. I was like, they didn't call the ambulance. I was like, so you ain't getting up.
Yeah.
I was like, you're going to lay here.
The ambulance is going to carry
and
you
when
out
we
of here.
take you out back, then you can get up. They started an IV at ringside. And I told him, I was like, I don't care what you got going on here.
Yeah. But you're going to
lay here and you're going to do what they need. I don't care if they do an enema.
CPR.
I was down there telling them, you're just going to lay here and we're going to go with it. And when we get out back, you'll be all right then.
Yeah.
You sign your thing, you go. Take the IV out, rock and roll. But to those people, it was real.
Yeah.
We can't get that. We can't ruin that.
No, you got to take that opportunity.
Yeah. So there was another
the
time.
The ambulance is coming already.
The ambulance is coming. We here.
They stars now.
We here.
Your ass inside the back of that ambulance.
So I'll tell you another funny story about that was Ravishing Ronnie Roberts, which still does the Reverend. Him and Alex Angel were feuding big. Ronnie was the heel, great heel, and we were working toward a match where it was a Texas Bull Rope match. Okay, yeah. So Ronnie at the time was from Canada, the big rodeo up there. That's kind of what we were shooting at. He had hung Alex Angel over the ropes, and he hung him, and then he let him go and come to the back. Those people were upset, so I said, "Go again, hang him again." And we went out like twice there. I kept sending him because I wanted him to keep peeking those people. At some point there, Alex had choked on his chewing gum. So he began to legitimately kind of throw up. No, that was not planned, but he had choked on his chewing gum. Right, it's gold. Let's go with it. Yeah. So I remember we got phone calls and messages of people, I'll never be back there again. I'm never coming back. Y'all did that to him. That's awful. And I'd always have to play devil's advocate. But the next week, the crowd was kind of down. But I knew eventually at the payoff they'd be back.
Come back.
And eventually Alex wins over and gets them all. But, we did another gimmick back in the day for Glensboro where I almost legitimately killed a guy. I had Mason the Mangler. He don't wrestle anymore, but he was an Abdul the Butcher type. He was, big guy, fork, all the whole thing. I mean, just a monster. And I was doing the Black Rain thing. I had this job guy that Purple Haze had tried to train. He did a great job. He just wasn't, didn't have everything we needed to get him to where he wanted. So I had him working with Mason Mangler that night. And I told Mason and him, we were talking, I said, he's going to hang you at the end. He had a little rope gimmick that he pulled out, choked him with it, throw him over the ropes. ass sets on the apron, you're good to go, blah, blah, blah. So he wraps the rope around. Rope's probably about, I don't know, quarter size. Throws him over, ass is on the ropes, everything's good, selling. For some reason, he slides his ass off the apron.
Oh, shit.
So now this he's hung for real.
Yeah.
Like this noose has cinched up and he's holding it. And Mason's like, he's hanging for real. And I was like, oh, shit. So I had to go down there but not break, character. And I lifted him up and I was hitting him as hard as I could in the head. And I was like, you stupid. Just telling him. And eventually security came over. I said, you're going to have to lift him up and cut that off because he's going to die for real.
Yeah.
And I remember that once they got it off of him, that he had a seizure for real at the ringside.
Oh, shit.
But I told Mason, I was like, don't break character, just go on to the back.
Yeah.
I was like, we can't,
Yeah,
ain't our business. Let's roll.
Right.
Well, we ain't doing this. So, you get into stuff like that. But I think nowadays some of that's lost because people want to please the people too much.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize is when they come in that building, they want to see a show. So if I'm going to a movie and I want to watch a movie, well, I don't want them to tell me what's going to happen, or I don't want it to seem fake. So if I go to watch Jurassic Park and the dinosaur don't look real, well, then hell, I ain't going to watch the sequels.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's got to, in that world, I want to come in, I want to pay my money, I want to sit there for 2 or 3 hours, I want to be entertained, I want to forget about my water bill that's past due or whatever the circumstances is on the outside of the world.
Exactly.
And I want to enjoy the show. And then when I'm done, I'll get back to the world. But I want to come next week and I want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what people forget. And Jared, God rest his awesome soul, said it best. You always got to leave them with who shot JR.
Yep.
That's what you leave them with. And that comes from the old thing. So,
True story.
I talked to Victor Miller, and he wrote Friday the 13th, and he was a soap opera writer for years after that. And I asked him, I said, Victor, how y'all write soap operas? He's like, we start at the end, and we write backwards. So we know what Friday is going to be, so we write backwards to Monday. And that's the way I booked shows. I would start at the end, and I would work backwards.
So you start at the end of the month, and then
I knew where I wanted to be, so I would work backwards.
Yeah, that makes
And every
sense.
week it would get there like a soap opera.
Any story, I think, makes sense.
That's the way it
like
works.
That. Yeah.
But those people come in, they would enjoy it. They would, and then they would immerse themselves into the stories. You give them a big payoff, and then boom, you're off to the races. So I love booking to this day.
Yeah.
But
you get to do it very often anymore?
No, I don't anymore. But there is some things I try to help with, or I try to help the guys with, or I'll give Larry and them ideas. But I love doing it. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's just so time consuming. Yeah. And WCCW was a weekly show, so it was literally like I was booking weekly television.
Yeah.
So I mean, it takes a lot of time, but I love it. I love the business to this day. I mean, it's always a part of my life.
Doing a weekly show is like, it's very taxing. We do this every week, and it's like.
Well, I think Tony's seen that with Lawrenceburg.
Yeah,
it is hard.
Yeah,
especially when you have kids and things. I mean, man, that's a commitment. When you're out there every week, you got to try to get them people there every week, and sometimes they don't have the money to be there every week. So you got to get creative with things.
Yeah, I don't think everybody has the money to go down there every weekend.
And I'll tell you one thing that I love.
And there's so much wrestling on the TV right now that some people are like, well, I'm just going to stay home and watch wrestling tonight.
I'll tell you one thing that I love that Tony did down there in Lawrenceburg is he's got that 4-pack of tickets.
Yeah.
He has like a group ticket. That helps those families.
Yes.
And that's another thing Larry and them do with Gen Next is, man, they think about the families and the money and how much value that ticket has. And, you got to kind of.
It does. Like, a lot of people think, like $15 ain't a lot, but like you got 4 or 5 kids, or
that's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
And we got some fans down there, the guys that sit in the front row there, and he brings his 2 kids and his wife every time, and he's spending he's spending almost $100 a week coming down there.
I love wrestling, and I love helping in some way. If I can help them in some way, and Tony's told me, and Larry lets me help too with things, but Tony's told me you're welcome anytime, and I got to go down there and film with Larry's documentary and kind of seeing how everybody. And there's so many young, hungry guys out there right now.
Damn straight.
But they need guidance. Some of them need some guidance, and some of them need a little bit of tweaking. But man, they're so hungry, and that's what I like to see.
That's what we like to do too. We like, we have a podcast. We love wrestling. We definitely can't get in the ring, and I can't get in the ring. But we have wrestlers come in here and we give them an opportunity, a 2-hour window of a commercial for yourself.
Think, for 2 hours.
Yeah.
As long as you can carry an interview, that's a hell of an opportunity for anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Promoters, anybody. You can come in here for 2 hours. You can push yourself for 2 hours. You can talk about things for 2 hours.
That's right. It's a commercial.
It is. And you all got a good following.
Yeah, we do. We have a
so,
really good
there may be 100 people in here, and they may come to your show next time. Or they may buy a ticket. If 50 of those people buy a ticket, that's good.
What I think we've done is we've brung a lot of wrestlers together that didn't really know each other.
Right.
Now they know each other and they're friends and they talk to each other more because they've seen them on the podcast. Well, I've been on that podcast. I've seen you on that podcast. They called in, they talked to each other, and okay, I didn't know that guy, but now I know who he is.
I think that nowadays as a promoter, your job needs to be to promote.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we've forgotten sometimes is you forget some of those roles, and then everybody tries to do one thing.
Uh-huh.
And then with Gen Next, Larry and Max work very well together. Larry kind of does that promotion. Max does the booking part. I do the production thing.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're trying to promote and you're trying to book and do everything.
Those guys do a great show. They really do. When they were doing the bar brawl down there, we were big fans. We'd go every time they'd have it. We barely missed one. And
exactly.
Those guys.
It got to the point, where I had to step away from the production side.
Yeah.
I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
And I hated it. But I'm going back, and I'm going to produce Larry's final show in Cynthiana that's coming up in November.
Cool. That's awesome.
So, it is an opportunity to
their
do
school
that.
Their school is awesome
their school's
too.
amazing.
I mean, they're putting out so many people. Big John Gilbert came from there. Alexis Littlefoot, Kellen Craven, Nate Gnarly. I mean, a lot of guys come out. Gaston LaRue's been down there. A lot of those guys. That's the place to train, and they're so inexpensive. Guys, if y'all want legendary wrestling school,
legendary wrestling academy.
Yep, Larry does a great job, and with any of that stuff, as he takes those boys and girls, and he teaches them from the beginning, and he lets them go, and he gives them opportunities.
I think the whole combination of Max and Larry, and then you have all the students that want to come back and help.
Yep,
it's amazing. Those guys, and I can't believe the price that they charge. It's so inexpensive.
He tries to make it affordable.
Yeah, it's very affordable.
The thing that Larry always does is he makes it like a family.
Yeah.
So he'll take those kids and he'll groom them and he'll shape them into it, and they can always kind of come back and ask advice.
You can tell when it's a Larry guy. When you see them together.
Yep.
They're like brother and sister kind of. They're just so close.
They travel together. They do a lot of things.
You can tell when
together.
it's. You can tell those guys are from a different. They're different than everybody else.
And I'll have them reach out and I'll be like, "Hey, what about this for my gimmick?" Or I'm trying to do this. Or I'm trying to think about that, and I'll try to help them and figure it out. And I mean, it's just there's guys that have traveled 10 hours just to work for Larry. Like Brawler Morrison does that. He'd travel a long way. He just start getting into the death match stuff. I think he's going to Mexico. And he's like, "What advice do you got?" And I told him I tried to help him out, tried to get him where he needed to be.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's just you got to do that kind of stuff.
You had something you want to say?
Yeah, there's 3 things I want to say. It's from Ian Mosley. The first is, my name can't even be mentioned without a riot almost there starting. I feed every single one of those toothless mouth breathers.
Thank you, Ian.
Then he said, "Well, I'm soaking all this knowledge up right now, brother. Appreciate you. I'll spread this on to our new trainees."
Yeah, it's
And then 130 stars were sent. That means there's more.
and I'll tell you, if I'm happy to come out, if there's wrestling promotions or schools in the area, if you want me to come out and talk to them and go over gimmick seminars or whatever, I mean, I've got a whole seminar put together of things, and I try to go over that and help them develop who they are, because a lot of people don't understand that that's a whole thing. It's
the whole
developing a
philosophy
character.
part of the wrestling.
A lot of people forget that.
If they do, and they forget who they are. And if you don't know who you are, then you don't know who you are, and you can't go out there and you can't play it to the people.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you got to understand who you are. So that's, that's kind of helped me along the way. Wrestling has helped me psychology-wise in everything that I do. I use a little bit of that wrestling psychology in every aspect of things that I do. And it's fun to me. You know, I love it. You know, promotions and things like that. So I've used it to build everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, even Scarefest and CryptidCon, the conventions.
So tell us about that. You helped build Scarefest?
Yeah. So me and Patty Starr, we came up with the idea in about 2006 of a horror and paranormal convention, and then we did our first one here in Lexington in 2008. Still goes on to now. I left in 2014 area. Yeah. And I went on to do my own thing, but we built it to, I mean, we was getting 15,000 people.
Who's doing it now?
If you hadn't asked him the name.
Well, I met him.
The Griffiths, Brandon and his wife are doing it. They're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
I met them last year, I think, at, where was it?
It was at Big Fest.
Big Fest, yeah.
So, I mean, they do a great job. And Brandon's good people. Him and his wife are great. And they still got some of the folks that still work. But, you know, I used that whole psychology of that. And that's why whenever Scarefest was going on, the first year we did it. And second year, I wanted this big elaborate entranceway with this long hallway. And the reason I wanted that was because when you see that entranceway, you're here. You're at the show. Yeah. And that long walkway that opened up into the convention center was to build that anticipation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, you're building that excitement. And then when they're in there, you're off to the races. And then you trap them all day long.
You're doing something new now with the Bigfoot convention here in Lexington?
Yeah, so we do CryptidCon. It's Bigfoot Monsters and Legends. This is, I believe, our 6th year. It's our 3rd year in Lexington. We started in Frankfort. We quickly outgrew that. November 18th and 19th, right here, Lexington, at the Clarion Hotel over on Newtown Pike. And, I mean, we're drawing, 4,000 or 5,000 people a weekend. We got speakers coming from everywhere.
I'd love to. We're going to come to that because I'd love to have some of those guys come on and
so
talk about Bigfoot stuff.
And we represent a lot of these guys. We have a company called Creepy People Management, and it's creepy people managing creepy people. Yeah. And creepytalent.com. And what we do is we manage like Nick Groff from Ghost Adventures for events, Jason from Ghost Hunters, the Mountain Monsters, Cliff and Bobo and those guys. Yeah. So there's not many paranormal folks that you see on television we don't book into events.
Really? Okay.
So the reason we started that is because we were having to book people for events. So everybody asked, why don't you just start your own company doing that? Thing, So we have this pool of folks now that we just call them and, hey, you want to do our show?
That's awesome. That's awesome. What else? What else are you into? You're into every damn thing. A little bit of everything.
So I do a ghost walk every weekend pretty much in Lawrenceburg.
Okay.
It's called the Lawrenceburg Ghost Walk. It's going on right now. KYGhostTours.com. I have one this Saturday at 8 p.m. And it's a walking tour in Lawrenceburg, and then we enter the Anderson Hotel, which is a very infamous haunted place at the end.
How much does that cost?
$15 a person.
Okay,
you get to go
very
in.
inexpensive.
So we might have to do that.
So you can do it online. You can buy tickets online if you want. You can buy them at the door, whatever you want to do there. But it's on Facebook, the Lawrenceburg Ghost Walk. And then we're going to do a haunted house out of the Anderson Hotel this year. We're looking for sponsors now. If anybody wants to sponsor.
That's right.
Old Anderson. Oh, look at there. Scott Diamond there.
Speaking of this.
So that final plug there, oldandersonhotel.com or the Facebook page. We're looking for sponsors. They're very inexpensive, but we're trying to, kind of fund that haunted house. So
good evening, Mr. Diamond.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Appreciate hearing from
guys.
you,
We got Scott Diamond on the phone, and I guess he wants to talk to Jeff Waldridge.
I hope he does.
I certainly do.
I'll tell you something about Scott before he starts. Is I love Scott Diamond. He was one of my original go-to guys, and I'll tell you, Scott was in the crowd when I started booking down there. But he had such a voice, and he was so good, and he was so hungry to get back in there. And so I said, Scott, can you ring announce? Because I wanted an in-ring announcer. And that's something that a lot of shows don't have. Yeah. They have guys sitting over here at the DJ booth or whatever. I wanted an in-ring announcer. Yeah. In a shirt, a nice suit that hyped the crowd to get them going, much like a ring master does in a circus. All his job is to get the crowd going and to keep them rolling. And that's what Scott did for me. And then he moved into the Scott Diamond managerial role and took off with that. But Scott was also my MC for many years for Scarefest.
Oh, wow. And, okay. We didn't know that.
Yeah. So I said I need a voice. And that's another psychology thing that I did. I said, I want a guy talking, tell him where everybody is, where everything is. And Scott was my guy that I went to after a couple years. He
Scott, you never told us about that.
Well, Jeff and I have done so many things together. Scarefest, wrestling, TV. Raw Fear.
Yeah.
It's just we've done so much that sometimes it escapes me as hard as it is to believe because I talk so damn much. But we have done a lot of great things, and definitely Jeff has been. When I came to Kentucky, as Jeff said, I had been out. I started down south, and I had been out for a while, and I just liked the energy over there that they had. I just came to see a wrestling show because I was managing a place, and Santa would come in, and he kept saying, "You got to come to my show. You got to come to my show," which I've loved wrestling all my life. And so when I finally got to go, the very first night that I went, man, I was just Jeff. He was writing stuff that had a magnetism to it. As he said earlier, I've been watching the show all evening. When you left that night, that cliffhanger, you wanted to come back. So I had put off coming over for a long time because I just stay so busy all the time with the fence company and everything. But when I went over that very first night, it was like, man, you know what? I need to get back into this. I just thought my time was over. I just thought I was done as far as wrestling was concerned. And there was such a magnetism there in the air when I went over that first night, and I met Jeff, and he was asking me, I need a ring announcer. Do you think you could do that? And I said, man, you know what? Whatever will get me back in this business, brother. Let's do it. And so we went to ring announcing, and wrestling crowds are really tough. Jeff will tell you, we were out there every week, and it's really tough to get those people. Unless they like you, you got to get a connection. And if you don't get a connection, you don't get to stay in that position long.
And that was one of the things that I used Scott for was he had to be a person that they trusted. So, the ring announcer, whenever that was the first person they seen for the show.
Exactly.
And that's the person that would tell them what was going on. Here's what's going on. He would react to things. He would announce things. But he had to be a person that they trusted.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of Scott's role, and they felt comfortable with it. But if they seen Scott, freaking out, then they would freak out. If they seen, because they were like, oh, man, this is different. And then Scott moved into like a general manager thing. I had turned heel, and I told him the story before we went on there, and I'll tell it now. There was a night where I had this spike that I carried to the ring, a wooden spike.
Oh, thank you very much.
So, yeah. So, the whole thing was I hit Scott with this spike, right? And just blood everywhere. And being in Kentucky, you had to, you couldn't use real blood like I wanted to. And I remember that Tim Gonerman, the commissioner at the time, would always tell me, you're using a lot of fake blood up there. I'd be like, I've got points to get across, Tim. Don't rain on my parade. So,
right.
I hit Scott with that blood everywhere. And it was great. And he had a white shirt on, everything. He cut this promo in the back. And you can still see that Scott sometimes shares it. And,
it's personal.
Yeah, and I was up above him, dropping blood down where it would run down his face still, where it would still be moving. And all over. I mean, he looked like a murdered person.
Yeah.
And that was the night of the accident too.
And that's what I was telling him was you got in the car and you didn't wash off because you lived down the road there. So you were just going to go home, clean up. And you all got to that intersection and somebody T-boned the car.
Wow.
With his family inside there. Yeah. Austin was in there, I remember. And I remember that you called me on the phone and said, can you come back? There's been an accident. I turned right around. I was headed to White Castle, actually. And I turned around, picked Scott up, and Austin, I believe, rode with us.
Because, see, that was the thing. Jeff and I clicked so well at first. I knew him better than I knew anybody down here.
Basically
other than
his family, here, because he didn't have a lot close. And so I took him to the hospital.
Sure did. And, Austin was so afraid he wouldn't get into the ambulance. And so when Jeff said, hey, come on over here and get in the car with us, Austin went with Jeff. He didn't even walk across 127 with me. He went with Jeff and his wife at the time and got right in the car.
Yeah, so
let me tell you.
The bloody shirt and everything, they thought he was half dead, and he had to tell me, he was like, no. He was like,
thing.
like, no, I'm good. You need to work on them, because his wife and daughter they were bad shape.
Yeah.
And I remember,
broke 5 vertebrae.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
it was
wow.
bad. And I remember we sat at UK hospital till probably, Scott, 3 or 4 in the morning?
If not later.
Yeah, and I remember that you said, I'm still going to get you those White Castles. So we went through the White Castles.
After we left the hospital, we went to White Castle.
Because I was getting them for my daughter. And he was like, I'm still going to get those babies at White Castle. So we went through White Castle and got White Castle, and then I took them home. So, we've done so much, and that's what those memories and things like that is. I love to see Scott doing things. I like to see Austin getting into things now, because I mean, it's just
Austin's amazing. Austin's amazing.
And, it really is.
With his his
Jeff,
voice.
Jeff played a part in that. He's known Austin all his life.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I mean,
I first met Austin. He was down there announcing in Frankfurt, and I thought he was like a 23-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And he was like 15.
He's been around the business for a long time.
I'm sorry for cutting you off, Scott.
Yeah, all his life.
So I mean, I have a special place for Scott, and it would take a phone call, and whatever Scott needs, I'll help him out any way he can. But it's just it's you form those brotherhoods like with Larry and me and things like that, and you just that's what's missing sometimes is that brotherhood, and people forget that that's what it was built on. And
it's not the same as when we came in, Jeff. It really isn't.
Not. And there's not that brotherhood. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of people out for themselves. And if you all work together, you'll be successful. Yeah. And if you don't work together, and then there will be a problem there.
Hard
eventually.
facts.
Yeah. So I mean, that's Scott's done tons. I mean, we always try to stay in touch. We don't talk as much as we should because we're so busy with things. But I've always. I mean, once I have somebody that I know that I can depend on, I always lean on them when I can. And I did the same thing with DJ Otis Badass. We were doing the production stuff, but I used him for Wild Man Days. The street festival we did in Lawrenceburg, he announced that for me. He does voiceover work for me. Scott hung himself in the hotel as a video. So I needed a guy to play a drunk man that hung himself, one of the suicides in the old hotel as part of a video project.
Tell us about this.
And so Scott was the guy. So I was like, Scott, I need you to play a drunk man. He was like, well, that ain't too far of a stretch from reality. But he said, I'll do it. But Scott put on an old shirt. Yeah.
Hey, Randy.
Oh, God. I said, Jeff, why is it that every time you need a drunk, you call me? And it's because he does his homework. He said, because you're the best guy for the job.
So I knew Scott would commit totally.
Been training for years.
So he had let his beard kind of grow out, and he wasn't clean shaven, and he put on an old shirt that was in the hotel, and I mean, he did a great job. I still use that footage to this day for things, to promote things, and I always remember that. I've got all the
That was
footage.
A great time.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
a great time. And, when Jeff came to me and he said, we're doing this video, it's a rap video and stuff, but it's got a really moving message. And I said, Jeff, rap video, man, I don't know. I'm a Dean Martin kind of guy. And after he explained, the message, I felt so compelled as a veteran dealing with demons. How could I not do this project now? Because it really, man, it hit home. Hit home.
What I was looking for there was I was doing a rap video for Hybrid, the rapper, Chris Bollinger, which, he's a local rap guy, real good artist, honestly. But he was doing a video called Pray For Me. And the whole message was about people battling demons.
Yeah.
So I had Haley Shadows, which wrestles. I had her play a heroin addict, which is far from what she is. She's a straight edge, so she just never even touched drugs.
Yeah.
But I said, I need you to be a heroin addict, so I had to coach her through that. Scott played a Vietnam vet that was going through PTSD issues, that was battling suicidal thoughts. So in that video, you kind of see him, we shot this at a funeral home. And I remember there was one scene that I said, Scott, I need you to just run into the mirror sweating. And then I cropped in a beautiful, image of war. Well, that's what he was thinking. So he woke up from this cold sweat. He was going through his actual photo book
Yeah, it
his
was action.
military days.
Yeah.
And he had the gun and the alcohol, and then we shot a scene where he was going to one of his friends' funerals that had passed away as like a military funeral. And we had a real casket and everything, but it was just to send that message of no matter what you're battling, you know, you can get through that. So
Damn
Yeah.
straight.
you know, Scott's been one of those guys that I've leaned on a ton for, you know, all kinds of, because I know he can pull it off.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know.
Man of many talents.
You know, that was so touching. You know, even I'm just getting cold chills talking about it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
message was so strong. If I pull that video up, in which I do, because I do battle with these things. That's why I was so compelled to do it. You know, Jeff we got to know each other so well. There for the longest, man. Every day we were talking. He got to know me so well that this was not.
What's the
This
video?
was dead on.
Pray for me.
Pray for me, John.
Yes, Pray for Me was
pull it up,
dead
we'll
on
see
what I was dealing with. And when Jeff allowed me to do this, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, Jeff. I mean this. You know how much I love you, man. Doing that video, that helped me so much to admit to the demons that I really do have. It just helped me so much. I mean, I pull that thing up still, and, you know, it brings tears to my eyes. But that's how strong of a message that was. And Jeff directed and produced this thing, and I'm telling you, and I've been around a long time. I've seen a lot of documentaries. That rap video, to me, is one of those things that is timeless. 200 years from now, they can watch that video. He done such a hell of a job on this. They could watch that video, and it would still be relevant 200 years from now.
Sean, go back to the search.
Look
and put
up Pray For Me Hybrid.
hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hybrid to rapper.
I heard you.
Yeah,
And I'll
pray
tell you
for
another thing. I was watching earlier. You guys were touching on, and I'm not trying to embarrass Jeff by saying he does all these great things and kissing his ass. Because hey, when we screwed shit up, believe you me,
Oh,
he'd come
yeah.
tell me, and I would tell him. And that's what made it so good. We
it's
wanted
important.
such a powerful, you know, we wanted everything we did to be the best that it could be, and we were really hard on ourselves. But
Just hits.
everybody
Just
has,
search.
you know, everybody in the world has talked about the Scott Diamond birthday bash for the last 11 years.
There it is.
It went on longer than the Brad Armstrong Memorial.
Yep.
And that was, you know, people say, Scott, how did you come up with that? That was not my idea. That was Jeff's idea. Jeff came up with all of that. And here it is. You know, we're getting ready in January to have our 12th one.
Yeah,
And I mean,
So
you
you,
know,
did you do a lot of music videos or just this
yeah,
one?
I'll do anything.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
anything. If anybody needs any production things, music videos, whatever, editing, graphic design, whatever, outthewindowmedia.com is my company, and you can
Yeah.
get on there and it'll have my contact information. But that kind of shows Scott there in the video that you're looking at. It kind of deals with the the different things. But we shot that. I was actually in the middle of a creek.
Yeah.
And I shot that
Yeah.
standing in the middle of a creek. But the whole story is I try to only get involved in I'll do anything for money production wise
Yeah.
within reason. But I try to
anything for
get
money.
in,
You get it right.
I try to get involved in messages that I can tell.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
kind of what I think about is what's the message, what can we tell, what can we do with this. And that's what it is. It's just a beautiful message. It was shot on no budget. And, I took advantage of it. I knew a guy with a funeral home, and I knew what I needed to have. And
I think sometimes when you don't have a budget, you got to be very,
I
very
work
creative.
with very low
Exactly.
budgets. And here's the thing that I tell people all the time. And
We
I try
do
to
this
get
whole
this
podcast
across.
on no budget.
And there's that
That's
scene
true.
I'm talking about. It's,
Yeah.
he woke up, he's in a sweat. There's the footage there. But if anybody
Yeah, he
thinks...
sprayed me in the face with glycerin. He's not
I
telling
did.
you that part.
I did, actually. Yeah, I did. I kept spraying him. I was like, come on, Scott, we need more sweat. But I
God.
always tell people, if you think that you can't afford a professional product,
Yeah.
then you haven't talked to me. And
Yeah.
let me at least give you
Right.
a quote. And I'll try
Right.
to work within your budget to get you a good commercial, to get you, a good, graphic design or a logo or something. And, outthewindowmedia.com. That's my company. That's what I use. And if you need to do that, you can find me on Facebook through that company. You can get my phone number. You can get my email. But I try to help people. So I'll work within your budget best
Yeah.
as possible. So, if you need something, hit me up.
Hey, Andy. Turns out we do have a budget. Ian said.
And if
we
I could
have
just
a
say one other thing, the 350, I think it was 356 people, Jeff, was the very first Scott Diamond birthday bash. We had them lined on the wall. I mean, it was sold out, people standing outside. And I want to say also, not only did Jeff and I, we get along so well, so much respect for each other, he introduced me to a guy that I will go to my grave just loving to death, and that's TJ Lightning.
Oh, yeah.
He and I had, Jeff and I done some matches. Actually, the Butcher and Jeff, we were able to keep them for the tag titles at one point. I had to stand in because Frank was out having a baby.
Yep.
So, it was a great time.
Frank the Tank was one of my original guys.
Yeah, Frank the Tank.
He's coming in town, Jeff.
That's awesome. Yeah,
he's going to be. I
think I got him booked August the 11th. He's coming in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frank the Tank was one of the frat boys. I eventually.
Yeah.
So the Diamond Exchange is returning to the Nice Guy Andy podcast channel. So and Scott Diamond's going to be interviewing.
I think Jeff was the very first guy. Jeff was the very first guy.
Yeah.
And that was after my heel turn. I went on there.
Yeah.
And
hopefully we can make this Diamond Exchange thing maybe a monthly thing or a bi-monthly thing.
And the first Scott Diamond Battle Royal, you won, right, Scott? I was the last man in the ring.
Yep.
And you won, and your dad was there that night. God rest his soul. And I wanted to do that for you, where your dad could see that. And
I kept saying, all these guys in here. I'm sorry to interrupt, Jeff.
He didn't want to win it.
Yeah.
You gotta win it.
Yeah.
So I was the last man out, and he dumped me out, and he won, and it was great because his dad got to see that. So I mean, that was special for me.
Hey Scott,
that was
your biggest fan just said something. Jim Brown, he said, "Scott, go to bed, old fart."
Well, tell him to get back down in the basement, take that dress off, and leave the dogs alone because they don't need to be eating all that peanut butter.
Exactly.
Oh, damn, Jim.
Hey, I don't want to keep you guys. I just wanted to reach out and let you guys know. Jeff already knows. We have had a great marriage. He and I through the years. We've done some great projects. He actually opened the door so that I could come back into a business that I thought that I was long gone from. And honestly, had Jeff not given me that opportunity to come back into wrestling, I wouldn't have had, I'm getting ready to be inducted in my 4th Hall of Fame. I would not have had that because I was at a point where I was second guessing myself. When I was young, I was a mediocre wrestler at best. And when I met Jeff, I was already in my 40s. And so I was questioning whether that I could still do something that anybody would want to look at. And he proved me wrong. He gave me an opportunity. We ran with it, and it exploded. And so it really, had I not had the opportunity to come back for my second chance in the wrestling business, nobody would have ever known who Scott Diamond was. When I came back, I had a better career than I ever thought about when I was younger. And I think it was because I was surrounded by some great people, and I was a little older, and I wasn't so, I was egotistical, but I wasn't so egotistical as far as it just had to be Scott Diamond. It was about the show, and if it worked for the show.
Here's the thing people misunderstood about an ego. If you don't have an ego, you don't protect yourself. And
right on.
It's okay to have an ego as long as you can keep it under control.
That's
because
right.
if you don't have an ego, you're not going to practice self-control. You're not going to have creative control yourself. And it's okay to do that as long as you can keep it under control, because it's okay to say no.
Well, we have something in common because you brung Scott Diamond back into wrestling, and we brought Bobby Blade back to wrestling.
Yeah, I love Bobby Blade, too.
Yes.
Bobby's great.
Bobby's always hard on himself when he'd do color commentary
Hey,
or something.
We're going to get some kind of...
Hey, Taylor.
Yeah,
We're going to get some kind of Hall of Fame for just even doing that.
Yeah, you know how many Hall of Fames I'm in, Scott? 1. Okay, so I like to see other people go in the Hall of Fame.
Like
if I can get them in there, whatever.
Jeff's in the Hall of Fame for bringing Scott Diamond back.
Scott's about to be
Hey,
a 4-time
I'm telling you,
Hall of Fame.
for the people that love Scott Diamond the last 15 years, they got Jeff Waldridge
Oh,
to
thank
thank.
you. I appreciate
For those
that.
people that have hated Scott Diamond from day one, they have Jeff Waldridge
That's right,
to
dude.
blame.
To blame.
So,
To
So
thank
whichever
too.
way it goes.
Yeah.
I always tell people, it's just if you can help somebody else out, or you can get them somewhere. It's not about me. I don't care if I've done all kinds of cool things all over the place.
Yeah.
But if I can help somebody out get somewhere else or get somewhere to the next level or whatever the case is, and they just say thank you or show gratitude in some, well, that's great. I like that.
That's kind of what we do around here is we bring people on and try to showcase them and promote them and show people who they really are. And that's what we like to do too.
You know, I've had people that have went on to, you know, WWE or whatever, and you know, I never ask for anything, but they may give me tickets or something, and I'm like, well, that's cool, but I don't ask for it. I don't want to ask for it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you know, and I'm sorry to interrupt you again, but I don't want to take up all your time. I'm going to give it back to you. You know, Jeff helped me so much that when he opened Out the Window Media, and then he went to the Ghost Walk, I was the first one there and said, hey, look, man, here's X amount of dollars. I know you're going to make something out of it.
Yep.
And he did. Look, here we are. Ghost Walk has been going, what,
10 years?
8 years?
10 years now.
10 years.
Yeah.
So
it's on the 10th year. And Scott did. He was like, here's money. You know, take it, grow it, and that's what it is.
And guys, Lawrenceburg is not that far away, guys.
Exactly.
It's not.
Yeah, and it's good. It's a very interactive walk. I show videos and pictures and audio recordings on the tablet with a speaker. Yeah. So it's not just me talking; it's more of a walking presentation. So I mean, it's a good time. I promise that.
Yeah.
go check it out because he really does his homework. And again, I'm not trying to blow smoke up his ass. He does his homework. Anything that anything that he does,
about.
Yeah, that's right.
he puts 110% into it, and that's the key. He puts 110% into it.
You know, there's been a lot of people that have grown from things that we've done, like Scarefest and other things. And, podcast here and Hillbilly Horror Stories grew from Scarefest, and I still talk to them. It's great to see people do good things.
Yeah, exactly.
And to grow, and that's what I'm about. I love to watch other people be successful if you've helped them in some way.
Y'all are inspiring Ian Mosley to want to come down to Kentucky.
That's right.
Instead of being in Texas, because he said, "Oh, I'm definitely going to reach out. I feel like I need to evolve, but kind of stuck on where to go right now."
There you go.
That's right.
Hey, Taylor, how you doing? Taylor Bush.
Taylor's awesome.
Yeah.
She's
She's a big
Well, guys,
wrestler
I
fan.
want to throw it back to you. I just wanted to call in because Jeff, he always have a spot in my heart. We'll be friends till the end. It's that kind of friendship that we don't have to see each other every day, like we used to. But when we get a chance to talk, it's just like we never missed a beat.
Well, and I know if I need anything, and if he knows if he needs anything, I'm a phone call away. So, anything, just ask.
That's what I'm talking about.
How do you say her last name?
That's exactly right. So,
Bushon.
Andy, Johnny, Sean,
Yes,
keep
sir.
up the good work.
Thanks,
Jeff,
sir.
I love you, man.
I love you too,
Keep
man.
doing what you do. And it was really good to talk about some of those old stories.
yeah, for
but
sure.
don't tell them tonight that I got beat by the mop.
Yeah, we won't do that.
We've heard that story.
The mock could beat you.
Hey,
You
guys,
beat that mock.
we've been on here 2 hours
All right.
already. And Scott,
Good
thank you
night,
for
guys.
calling. Thank you.
Good night.
Appreciate you, brother.
Everybody, that was Scott Diamond,
The man, the myth, the legend.
four-time
That's right. I'll say
inductee in the one of the Hall of Fames in Kentucky.
I'll say mine first.
Scott Diamond.
Yeah.
So really good friends of Jeff. So at this time, we've been here almost 2 hours. At this time, I let everybody say their last little words and say their closing remarks. So
I guess since
Sean,
I showed up
I'm gonna let you go
late 'cause
last.
I had to work. Oh, you let me go last?
No, I'm gonna let you go first. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I did show up late, so
You
you
kind of
should let
dressed. You're kind of dressed like Forrest Gump today. So
me luck hair. Life is like a box of
Run,
chocolates.
Forrest.
He's a working
run.
man.
he's the most crackerest cracker guy,
Hey, I'm
Cracker
a working
Barrel.
man. Anyways, Jeff, it's a pleasure. We may have met somewhere.
I'm sure, probably at some
but
point.
maybe not like this. I'm
Right.
showing this Jeff, but I've seen you around.
Hey, pull that mic up. Like
Will
speaking
you
to the
shut up?
Speaking to the end of it.
I speak in the end.
Black
You don't hush.
That's right.
Anyways, always a pleasure. Thank you, Johnny, Andy, guys. You were great. Thanks for holding it down while I wasn't here. Johnny, you were a good job coming down to get me, making it quick. Everybody in the comments, everybody that left stars, Ian Mosley. Everybody, we appreciate you. Everybody stay nice.
We almost called the show off.
Well,
Yeah.
You don't do it because of me. Good Lord.
Go ahead, Superfly Johnny Lee.
I just want to say thank you, Ian Mosley,
Okay,
for the
that's
stars,
enough.
because, brother, you are our budget. I want
He
to thank
said
Jeff
just the
Waldridge,
tip.
Thank you.
Black Rain,
Yeah.
for coming in. Andy, you're always a great host.
Kiss my ass a little bit more,
So-
Johnny.
You are the best
Tell
host
my great
that ever
ass.
exists. And you know what?
Thank you. It's your
All
job.
the other podcast hosts out there, y'all better realize this man right here works his ass off. What do y'all do? You just sit on your asses. Oh,
Johnny is the podcast god.
yeah, that's right. I am a podcast guy.
If you don't believe us, just ask him.
Also, check out my YouTube. Check out Superfly versus Bandito on TikTok. I'm always posting content on there. Oh yeah, and I just want to say, stay nice.
Jeff, go ahead.
You can find me if you're looking for production, any graphic design stuff, whatever you need. I'll do, I'll give you a quote on anything. OutTheWindowMedia.com is my production site. OldAndersonHotel.com is the Anderson Hotel. It's the hotel, very haunted hotel I manage. We're doing a haunted house. We're looking for sponsors. If you're interested, go there, contact me. And then the Lawrenceburg Ghost Walk, KYGhostTours.com. You can get all the information there. I want to thank you all for having me on.
Sir.
If you want HARDWAY, Smart Mark Video, Prime has Little Legendary. It also has Murder in the Moonlight. You
And
can
I
rent
have
those
Prime
on
now.
there,
Go
so
look
check
that
that out. But thank you all for having me on. It was great talking about wrestling and talking to Scott. And we'll have to come back and do this right before we
right.
kick Larry D's second documentary out. We'll do this again.
We'll probably have you on again before the Larry's
we
last
can-
show.
Yeah,
there.
we can do
That's
that.
right.
We can do all that. I'm down for whatever. So
yeah.
just let me know.
You got the
and-
inside and the inside of Larry. We might try to get you to get him on here.
I get you what we need, and there's a lot of guys that use this funnel. I mean, you got a 2-hour show to talk about yourself,
Yeah.
and to promote your thing.
It's
So
a
I mean,
commercial.
and
And
you
to
got a
us
great
good-
following.
Have a good time. Yeah, we
so,
do. We have a big
I
fun.
mean, I've really enjoyed this. We talked. It's like having a conversation. It's not like a dry old podcast. You all
No,
do a great job. So thank you all.
we
for
try to
having
keep it. We try to keep it lighthearted, and we like to have a little fun. And you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, anytime you all want somebody to come on and talk about, cryptids or whatever, if you want to do something, we'll do whatever. I don't care. I enjoyed myself.
all right. Well,
Exactly.
we appreciate you guys. This is Nice Guy Andy podcast. Go over to the Facebook page and help us out. Ian's right. He does. We do not have a budget for production. Ian pays the bills around here. So Ian,
Thank you, Ian.
You paying the bills. He helps him and Joe Monroe, Cal Maggard, Eric over at Phenomenal Finds, Matt at Matt's Games. We got
And we still got to check somewhere's our mail to go get
Bo and Terry England. We got the money from those guys. Thank you, everybody all of our sponsors. Thank everybody that supports us. Go over to the Facebook page, like, share, comment on all of our stuff. Don't just call us names if you want to, but we need your comments. We need your love. We need your positive remarks, because
Yes,
a lot of
please.
people want to do negative remarks on some of the posts we have. But not too bad, because we're pretty much loved by everybody. Go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe over there. We are getting really close to being monetized over there, guys. You can watch us over there anytime. All the shows are on. All the interviews are on YouTube. Go over there and check it out. And we appreciate you guys. What else?
Mash you.
Go hook up. Go look at Superfly Johnny Lee, his YouTube channel, which is called Bandito versus
Superfly versus Bandito.
Superfly versus Bandito over on YouTube. Superfly Johnny Lee on Facebook. We're trying to grow that page too. And check out me, Andrew Watkins, on Facebook. I'm getting ready to get monetized. I'm monetized on there again. So every little remark. Check out my reels.
People
and,
don't realize how hard that is to
Yeah.
get monetized. That's a task.
Yeah, we try to keep that page up, and Johnny spends so much time posting and helping with I feel like I help Johnny, but Johnny's really, without this podcast, without Johnny, this podcast wouldn't be as good. We would still have the podcast, but it wouldn't be near as good as it used
be as big.
as that's been lately. and Johnny gives his heart and soul to this, and he gives all of his time, and
Yes.
and someday hopefully this will pay off, and we'll be able to buy Johnny a buffet ticket or something at least. Guys, I guess that's all.
That joke's really, Andy. I just realized that. You want me to get buffet and get this all out there? No, I want me a ticket
Johnny,
for the workout.
You got to stay away from the Bose tractor. You got to use it for your muscles, not for your muscle.
I'll use it
And-
for whatever I want.
And you have to
Taylor.
you need to take the trash out. Hey, thanks, Taylor. Next time we need to get you to call in because she's at every show.
She really is.
Maybe we'll have her in the podcast. Taylor, if you're watching and you're still watching, we'll have you in the podcast. Maybe we'll make you part of the podcast.
You
'cause
can.
You seem to
MJ
be.
can come on up.
You seem to be at the shows a lot, so
Yes.
we need to know about these shows that's happening. We don't get to the lot of shows. We're doing production here. I got a day job.
Sean has a day job now.
Sean's the crackerist cracker at Cracker Barrel,
He's a cracker jack.
I'm a cracker.
and so I guess that's it, guys.
You not have fun?
You ain't getting none.
Damn Skippy.
Yeet, yeet.
Nice guy.
Nice Guy Andy podcast.
All right.
Records Radio.
Y'all's gonna suck next week for y'all. I've got to work once the end. I'm closing all next week.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Watch the Nice Guy Andy podcast.
They finally got me.
I'm telling you now, meditate, elevate, and dominate.
That was awesome.
Do it with the Nice Guy Andy podcast.
Sir. That ain't what your mama said.
Well, I like
Popping
long
off at the
podcasts.
mouth. I'm gonna be his
I
dad.
don't think that
Anyway,
short ones sometimes are too short.
you guys go on your little rinky-dink bullshit podcast.